Story 1: The Shadows of Schwarzwald. Part 1: The Invitation. October in the Austrian Alps doesn't feel like autumn. It feels like the edge of winter, a long exhale of cold that settles into your bones and refuses to leave. By the time the first snow began to cling to the peaks above St. Anton am Arlberg, Emma Carter had already been here 6 weeks. She told herself she was learning to love the silence, the way the wind pressed against the chalet windows at night, how the pine forest behind her house whispered when the weather changed. But most nights, when she couldn't sleep, she still reached for the empty side of the bed. The divorce had taken everything that once made sense: the house in Denver, the friends who had chosen sides, even her career. So when the listing for a small chalet overlooking the Schwarzwald Trail appeared online, she took it as a sign. A new beginning. A place where nobody knew her name. The town was small, barely 3,000 people, scattered across a valley surrounded by white teeth of mountain peaks. It smelled of wood smoke and wet earth. Locals nodded politely, but rarely spoke beyond a few words of English. Emma didn't mind. She wasn't ready for conversations yet. She just wanted to disappear into the rhythm of somewhere that didn't remember her. That Saturday morning, her alarm went off at 6:30. She rolled out of bed, the cold biting at her ankles as she stepped onto the wooden floor. Outside, the world was grey and soft, snow clouds pressing low, the forest wrapped in fog. On the counter sat the printed email from Magdalena Hofer, the local forestry coordinator, reminding volunteers to meet at 7:30 a.m. sharp for the Schwarzwald Trail cleanup. Wear warm clothes, bring gloves. We'll provide the rest. Emma poured coffee into a travel mug, grabbed her gloves, and tried not to think too much about the fact that this was the first time she'd done anything social in months. The gravel lot at the trailhead was already half full when she arrived. Her little Audi crunched to a stop beside a line of rugged trucks and old Volvos. A group of volunteers stood in a loose circle near the wooden mat board, steaming cups of coffee in their hands. Their laughter carried faintly through the cold. Emma recognized a few faces from town: Anna and Karl Gruber, who owned the bakery near the church. Anna waved when she saw her, her cheeks flushed from the chill. "You made it," she said in accented English, pressing a warm cup into Emma's hands. "Strong coffee. You'll need it." "Thanks," Emma said, smiling nervously. "I thought it might help me meet some people." Anna grinned. "Then you came to the right place, though maybe not the warmest one." They laughed softly, and for a moment, Emma felt something she hadn't in a while: normal. Then someone new stepped into the circle. He moved differently from the others, confident, almost deliberate. A man in his early 40s, tall, clean-shaven, wearing a black leather jacket that looked far too expensive for a volunteer event. A grey beanie shadowed his sharp features. When he smiled, it was quick and controlled, like a performance. "First time?" he asked, stopping in front of her. Emma hesitated. "Yeah. You?" He chuckled softly. "Hardly. I've been helping organize these cleanups for 3 years. Lukas Weber." He extended a gloved hand, and when she shook it, his grip lingered just a fraction too long. He had that kind of charm that made you want to believe him: calm voice, steady eye contact, a warmth that felt just slightly too practiced. As he spoke, he leaned in close, lowering his voice to something almost intimate. "You'll like it out here," he said. "The forest is honest. It remembers things." Emma smiled awkwardly, unsure how to respond. Before she could say anything, a woman in a green forestry jacket walked over, Magdalena Hofer, clipboard in hand, her expression sharp and professional. "Good morning, everyone. We'll split into teams of 4. Please stay with your assigned group," she said briskly. Her eyes swept the crowd, then paused briefly on Lukas. Her brow furrowed. "Mr. Weber," she said, "I don't see your name on the list." He smiled easily. Must have been a mix-up. I've done this before. I'll just float between groups, help where needed. Magdalena's expression didn't change. Fine. But stay within the designated area. Something in her tone made Emma glance between them. The air felt slightly colder. The teams were divided. Emma found herself grouped with Anna and Karl, who seemed pleased to have her along. Lukas, meanwhile, wandered nearby, pretending to check bags of supplies. His eyes followed Emma as she moved. They started up the trail, their boots crunching over frost and fallen pine needles. The forest was silent except for the sound of distant water, and the occasional gust that shook snow from the branches above. Anna chatted cheerfully about her bakery, how the locals fought over her apple strudel, and how tourists always asked for gluten-free options. Emma found herself laughing again, grateful for the company. They had cleared barely 100 meters when Lukas appeared on the path ahead, coming from the opposite direction. His cheeks were flushed from the cold, but his eyes were bright, too bright. "Hey," he called, waving a black canvas bag. "Found a dumping site about 100 meters that way. Broken bottles, wrappers, a mess. Could use another pair of hands." Anna frowned. "We should call Magdalena. If it's big, she'll send more people." Lukas waved dismissively. "It's fine. Just a little trash. I've already started. Come on, it'll only take a minute." Karl checked his watch. "We are almost at the break time anyway." Lukas's gaze flicked to Emma. "Then maybe just you can come, Emma? It's a short detour. There's a shortcut through the trees, it leads straight back to the main trail." He pointed toward a narrow, shadowed path that disappeared into the forest. The trees there grew closer together, their trunks forming dark, vertical bars. The air seemed heavier, quieter. Emma hesitated. Her heart picked up speed for no reason she could explain. "I think I'll stay with my group," she said carefully. Lukas's smile didn't fade, but his eyes sharpened, just for a second. "Of course," he said lightly. "Didn't mean to pressure you." Anna stepped forward slightly, her hand brushing Emma's arm. "We'll stick to the plan," she said firmly. Lukas nodded, backing away. "Sure. Just thought I'd help." He turned and disappeared into the trees. They finished their section by noon. When they returned to the trailhead, Magdalena was distributing sandwiches and water bottles from the back of her truck. She looked tense. Lukas was nowhere in sight. Anna leaned closer to Emma, lowering her voice. "You should be careful around that one," she said. "He's not on any volunteer list. Magdalena's been trying to get him to register for months." Emma frowned. "He said he's been organizing these." Anna shook her head. "He shows up at every event. Always friendly at first. Always talks to the women. Then something happens, he leaves early, someone sees him wandering alone in the woods. Last spring, a girl from Innsbruck, Sophie, stopped showing up to meetings. The police said she probably moved. But she didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to." Before Emma could ask more, Magdalena's voice cut through the chatter. "Everyone, check your teams. We are missing someone." The murmurs died. Emma's stomach tightened. "Sophie Klein," Magdalena said. "Her group hasn't seen her for nearly an hour." A sudden chill passed through the group that had nothing to do with the weather. Someone said they'd heard her phone ringing earlier, faintly, somewhere off the path. Anna and Karl exchanged a look, then jogged toward the sound. It didn't take long to find it, under a fir tree near the same shadowed trail Lukas had pointed out earlier. The phone screen was cracked, snow melting around it, a single unsent message still glowing. "He said he knows a shortcut. I don't trust him." Anna's hand trembled as she handed the phone to Magdalena. This was sent 30 minutes ago, she whispered. The forest was suddenly too quiet. Magdalena grabbed her radio. Everyone, back to the trailhead. Now? Emma stood frozen, her breath misting in the air. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked once, then again, sharp, urgent. The sound echoed through the trees like a warning. That was when Emma realized. She hadn't seen Lukas since he'd walked into the forest. And from that moment on, she never would, not the same way again. Part 2, The Disappearance. The police arrived before sunset. By then, the fog had thickened, curling low over the trees like smoke. Two uniformed officers spoke rapidly with Magdalena Hofer beside her forestry truck, their breath rising in pale clouds. The rest of the volunteers huddled near the gravel lot, subdued now, no one laughing, no one speaking above a whisper. The only sound was the dull hum of the wind threading through the valley. Emma stood apart from the others, her gloves still damp, her pulse still racing. She watched as one of the officers clipped a leash to a black German shepherd, and led it toward the trail. The dog sniffed the air, then pulled hard toward the narrow path Lukas had pointed out earlier, the one Sophie's phone had been found near. Magdalena's face was tight, her jaw clenched. No one leaves, she said, her voice steady but sharp. We'll need to take statements from everyone. Anna slipped an arm around Emma's shoulder. Come on, she murmured. You're freezing. They sat together on the back bumper of Anna's van, sipping from a shared thermos of coffee that had long gone lukewarm. Carl joined them, his expression grim. She was just here, he muttered. Sophie, she was laughing about the weather an hour ago. Anna's hand trembled as she tightened her scarf. Lukas told her about a shortcut, didn't he? Emma looked down at her gloves, remembering his voice, the low, coaxing tone, the way he said you'll like it out here, the forest remembers things. A shiver crawled up her spine. I don't know, she said. But it felt wrong. Like he was waiting for me to say yes. Magdalena approached, clipboard in hand, and gestured for Emma to step aside. You spoke with Lukas Weber this morning, correct? Emma nodded. Yes. He said he was helping organize the event. Magdalena's mouth pressed into a line. He's not with the forestry department. Never has been. Then who is he? We don't know. The answer landed like a weight in Emma's stomach. The officers returned half an hour later with news, or rather, the lack of it. They had followed the trail for nearly a kilometer, until the path split in two directions. The dog had lost the scent near a frozen stream. The only thing they found was a single black glove, half buried in snow, and a few footprints leading toward the deeper woods, one set smaller, likely Sophie's, and another larger, heavier, with a longer stride. By nightfall, the temperature had dropped below zero. Search teams would resume in the morning. The volunteers were sent home, but no one really left in peace. The drive back through the valley was quiet, the mountains looming like dark silhouettes behind the fog. Emma's hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly that her knuckles went white. The forest seemed to follow her headlights, the trees bending inward, their trunks crowding closer to the narrow road. When she reached her chalet, the world felt too still. She left the porch light on as she stepped inside, but the glow barely touched the corners of the small wooden cabin. Her reflection stared back from the window, pale, tense, unfamiliar. That night, Emma didn't sleep. Every creak of the wood made her flinch. At one point, she thought she heard something outside, a crunch of snow, faint but deliberate. She turned off the light and stood by the window, peering into the darkness. Nothing. Just the wind. And yet, she couldn't shake the feeling that someone was standing just beyond the tree line, watching. By morning, the village buzzed with whispers. Sophie Klein had not been found. Police combed the Schwarzwald forest with drones and heat sensors. They recovered fragments, a torn scarf snagged on a branch, a plastic water bottle crushed under a boot print, but no trace of her. When Emma stopped by the bakery later that day, Anna Grubber was already waiting for her behind the counter. The warmth of the ovens couldn't melt the worry in her face. Magdalena came by, Anna said quietly. They found Lukas's jacket. Near the stream. Emma froze. The leather one? Anna nodded. It was torn. Caught on a tree. They think he might have fallen or ran. She hesitated. But his truck's still here. Parked near the old ranger station. Emma frowned. So he didn't leave town? No. And that's what scares me. Carl entered from the back, wiping flour from his hands. They are saying he's not in any registry. No address, no family here. He just appeared a few months ago, said he wanted to help. Emma swallowed hard. And nobody checked. In a town this small. Carl sighed. Everyone's too trusting. Anna handed Emma a small paper bag, still warm bread inside. Eat something. You look like you haven't slept. I haven't, Emma admitted. I keep hearing things outside at night. Anna's expression softened. If you want, you can stay with us. We have a spare room. Emma smiled weakly. Thanks, but I'll be okay. She wasn't. 2 days later, the police expanded their search to the northern trails. The headlines called it the Schwarzwald disappearance. Tourists cancelled bookings. Locals whispered about the man in black. And Emma found herself jumping at every sound. That evening, just as she was locking the front door, her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. Static crackled on the other end. Then, a voice. Low. Calm. Familiar. Still exploring the forest, Emma. Her breath caught. Who is this? A soft laugh. You shouldn't stay alone out there. The woods remember people like you. Click. The line went dead. Emma's fingers trembled. She called the number back, no answer. She tried again, disconnected. The air in the chalet felt suddenly too tight, the shadows too long. She double-locked the door and drew the curtains. But even as she did, she couldn't ignore the faint sound of tires crunching on gravel outside, as if a car had slowed near her driveway, then stopped. She waited, heart hammering. After a long minute, the sound faded. Outside, the snow kept falling. Inside, the silence pressed down like a weight. The next morning, Emma drove straight to Magdalena's office at the forestry station. The woman looked exhausted, her desk littered with maps, photographs, and thermoses of cold coffee. She gestured for Emma to sit. I think he called me, Emma said. Last night. Magdalena leaned forward. You're sure it was him? I know his voice. He said something about the forest remembering me. Magdalena's expression hardened. That's what Sophie told one of our rangers 2 days before she disappeared. She said Lukas had been following her, telling her that the forest keeps secrets. We didn't take it seriously. Emma's stomach twisted. He's still here. Magdalena nodded slowly. And he's watching. But we'll find him. That afternoon, officers searched Lukas's truck, a dark grey pickup parked at the far edge of the lot. Inside they found hiking gear, a flashlight, several maps of the Schwarzwald trails, and a small black notebook filled with neat handwriting. Magdalena showed it to Emma later that evening, when the police were done photographing it. Each page contained lists, names, dates, locations. And next to each name, a short note. Sophie Klein, trusting, alone often. Magdalena Hofer, suspicious, avoid. Anna Grubber, married, not ideal. Emma Carter, new, lives alone, Audi white, chalet number 12. Emma felt the blood drain from her face. Her own name, underlined twice. Next to it, a final line written in a darker pen. Saturday. Perfect opportunity. That night, she couldn't stay in the chalet. Anna insisted she come to the bakery, and for the first time, Emma didn't argue. They sat in the back room with the oven still warm, listening to the wind rattle the shutters. At one point, Carl looked up from the radio. They found something else, he said. Near the frozen stream. A small cave. Anna's eyes widened. What kind of cave? Carl shook his head. They said there were supplies inside. Cans, water, blankets. And photographs. Emma's throat went dry. Photographs of what? He hesitated. Of people. From the events. From the town. Anna's hand covered her mouth. He was planning this. The room went silent except for the steady hum of the ovens. Outside, the street was empty, the snow glowing faintly under the yellow lamps. Emma glanced toward the window, half expecting to see a shadow move across it. Nothing. Only her reflection, pale, tired, and afraid. But as she turned away, she didn't notice the faint smear on the glass, the shape of a fingerprint pressed from the outside. Part 3, The Revelation. By the end of the week, the valley had turned white. The first true snow of October fell in thick, silent sheets, muffling everything, the church bell, the sound of cars, even the chatter from the cafe windows. For the first time since Sophie Klein vanished, St. Anton am Arlberg felt empty, like a town holding its breath. Emma hadn't been back to her chalet in 3 nights. She slept in the grubber's spare room above the bakery, wrapped in the smell of flour and coffee. Anna insisted she stay until the police found Lukas, but each day passed with the same news, nothing. No tracks, no car, no sightings. It was as if the forest had swallowed him. On the 4th morning, Magdalena Hofer arrived at the bakery, her coat dusted with snow. Her eyes were shadowed with exhaustion. We found something, she said quietly. You need to come. Anna started to protest, but Magdalena shook her head. Emma has to see this. They drove in silence. The road wound up through the trees, the snow growing deeper, branches heavy with ice. Eventually, the van stopped at a narrow logging road blocked by police tape. Beyond it, the forest loomed, endless and dark. A small team of officers stood around a clearing where the snow had been brushed away. The ground beneath was uneven, scarred with footprints. A narrow opening gaped between 2 boulders, the cave Carl had mentioned. Inside, the air was stale and cold. The light from Magdalena's flashlight crawled over the walls, revealing a rough space barely big enough for one person to stand. A sleeping bag lay rolled against the stone. Nearby, a crate held canned food, matches, and a stack of folded papers. Emma stepped closer. The smell of damp earth mixed with something faintly metallic. On the far wall, dozens of photographs had been pinned to the rock with nails, printed on cheap paper, curling at the edges. They showed faces she recognized, volunteers from the cleanup events, villagers, tourists. Some were candid shots, taken from a distance, people walking, talking, unaware they were being watched. Her stomach turned as she spotted one photo near the center. It was of her, standing outside the bakery, a cup of coffee in her hand. The date written underneath in neat, black ink, September 18th, 7:42 a.m. There were more, one of her car parked near her chalet, one of her hiking alone on the ridge. She had never noticed anyone nearby. Magdalena handed her a notebook, another one, smaller, leather-bound. This was hidden under the sleeping bag. Emma hesitated before opening it. The handwriting was the same as before, careful, deliberate. But the entries were different, less like notes, more like thoughts. They never look behind them. The forest hides everything I need. She's perfect. Alone, cautious, predictable. Saturday didn't go as planned. But soon. She'll come back to me. They always do. Emma's hand shook. He was writing about me. Magdalena's jaw tightened. It looks that way. Then one final line near the bottom stopped her cold. She'll find the truth herself. When the forest calls. Emma looked up. What does that mean? Magdalena didn't answer. That night, back at the bakery, the storm intensified. The wind howled through the narrow streets, and power flickered twice before settling into dim candlelight. Anna and Carl tried to keep things light, baking bread by lantern, pretending everything was fine. But Emma couldn't shake the feeling that someone, was still out there. Around midnight, she stood at the window, watching snow whip down the empty road. For a second, she thought she saw movement near the end of the street, a shape, tall and dark, slipping between the trees. Her breath caught. She blinked, and it was gone. She didn't sleep after that. 2 days later, the police announced the search would be suspended until the storm passed. The roads were buried, the trails impassable. Magdalena promised to update Emma, but even she sounded defeated. So Emma made a decision she didn't tell anyone. At dawn, she left the bakery and started walking toward her chalet. The road was half frozen, the snow crunching beneath her boots. The air smelled clean, sharp. It was quiet in that unsettling alpine way, no birds, no engines, no sound but her breathing. The chalet looked exactly as she had left it, porch light still on, frost covering the windows. Inside, everything was untouched. Yet the moment she stepped through the door, she knew someone had been there. The air felt wrong, heavier, colder, faintly metallic, like the cave. She checked the kitchen. The table was bare. Then she saw it, a single photograph, lying in the center. It was her, taken through the chalet window. She was standing in that same kitchen, holding her coffee mug. The timestamp at the bottom read, October 12th, 6:41 a.m. That was the morning before the cleanup. On the back, in careful handwriting. You looked right at me. Emma's hands went numb. She dropped the photo and backed toward the door, every nerve screaming to leave. But something outside the window caught her eye, a flicker of movement, just beyond the tree line. A shadow shifting between the trees. Her rational mind told her it was the wind. But the shape lingered too long. Too still. Watching. By the time Magdalena and the officers returned to check on her, the storm had cleared. They swept the area but found no new tracks, no signs of entry. The photo on the table was the only clue. They took it as evidence, but the handwriting matched Lukas's. A week later, another discovery. Farther up the valley, near an abandoned hiking route, a park ranger found a torn top buried beneath snow. Inside were clothes, a rusted lantern, and a small camera. The last photos stored on it were taken days before Sophie's disappearance. Most were of the forest, trees, paths, empty clearings. But the final image was strange. It showed Emma's chalet, framed from the woods, its windows glowing faintly in the dark. A faint reflection was visible in the glass, someone holding the camera. The timestamp, October 11th, 23:59. 1 minute before midnight. Winter came early that year. The valley froze solid, and the cleanup program was suspended indefinitely. Tourists stopped coming. The locals avoided the Schwarzwald altogether. Even in daylight, the place felt wrong, heavy, watchful. Emma stayed in Austria until December. Then, one grey morning, she packed her car and drove south through the mountains, leaving the chalet empty behind her. Anna and Carl watched her go, waving from the bakery doorway. She didn't stop to say goodbye. She couldn't. Before she left, she handed Magdalena a letter, short, typed, unsigned. It read, "If you ever find him, don't tell me. If you don't look for me. Magdalena never did. Months later, when the snow began to thaw, hikers reported strange sounds near the old Schwarzwald trail, faint tapping, like someone hammering metal into stone. Search teams returned once, following the rumors, but found nothing except a new photograph nailed to a tree at the clearing's edge. It was faded by snow and wind, but still visible. Emma Carter, standing in front of her chalet, smiling faintly. On the back, written in neat, dark ink. The forest remembers her. Some say Lukas Weber vanished into the Alps that winter, dying somewhere in the frozen dark. Others believe he never left. That he learned how to hide, how to wait, how to become part of the woods themselves. But those who still live near St. Anton know better. On quiet nights, when the snow falls heavy and the wind dies, they say you can hear footsteps just beyond the tree line, soft, deliberate, never rushing. And sometimes, when the light hits the frost just right, you can see a figure standing in the trees. Still. Watching. Always watching. Story 2: The Autumn Fair. Part 1: The Fairgrounds. October in Rothenburg ob der Tauber smells like roasted chestnuts and cold iron. The medieval town, with its half-timbered houses and narrow cobblestone alleys, looks like something out of a fairy tale, the kind you don't tell children before bed. Each autumn, the Herbstfest, the town's annual fall fair, turns the outer fields into a swirl of light and color. Lanterns sway above the crowd, brass bands play Bavarian folk songs, and the air hums with laughter, beer, and the faint metallic creak of the Ferris wheel turning over the fog. Sophie Muller, 24, had worked the ring toss booth since she was 16. Her uncle ran 3 of the games along the northern row, the quieter side of the fair where families came with children. Sophie liked it there. She knew every sound, the thud of beanbags hitting wooden boards, the rhythmic call of the raffle vendor, the distant shriek of riders on the spinning star drop. This year felt different, though. The air was colder, the fog thicker. Even the lights seemed dimmer, as if the fair itself was holding its breath. At noon, she arranged the stuffed bears and foxes into neat pyramids, humming softly to herself. Clara Schmidt, who ran the cotton candy cart next to her, called out over the noise of the generators. "You're early again, Sophie. You'll make the rest of us look lazy." Sophie smiled. Habit. She didn't mention she hadn't slept much lately. Her new apartment above the bakery on Plonline Street was nice enough, but the nights were long, and the silence after midnight always felt too heavy. By 2 o'clock, the crowd arrived, families with strollers, teens in school hoodies, old couples clutching mugs of glue wine. The fair pulsed with sound and color. Somewhere, an accordion wailed. That was when Sophie first saw Lena Fischer. 17, maybe. Bright green hoodie with the Rothenburg High emblem on it, blonde hair tied in a messy bun. She was laughing as she tried to help a little boy who'd dropped his sausage onto the cobblestones, buying him a new one from her own pocket. Sophie smiled. There was something kind about her, open, warm. For a moment, it made the day feel normal. By 5 o'clock, the sun began to sink behind the western towers of the city wall. A golden haze settled over the fairgrounds, turning the Ferris wheel spokes into lines of fire. The music softened, blending into the hum of evening conversation. That was when Sophie noticed the man. He stood about 20 meters from the cotton candy stand, half hidden by a food truck selling roasted nuts. Gray jacket. Baseball cap pulled low. He held a beer he never drank. His posture was casual, too casual, and his gaze was fixed on Lena. Every time the girl moved, to the lemonade stand, to the game stalls, the man moved too, always just far enough to look unconnected. He'd stop to check his phone, or glance at a sign, but his eyes always drifted back to her. Sophie felt a cold tightening in her stomach. She'd seen men like that before, travelers, drifters, tourists pretending to be locals. Most were harmless. But this one wasn't pretending to blend in. He was tracking. Lena hadn't noticed. She was texting, laughing occasionally at something on her screen, unaware that her every step was mirrored by a shadow. Sophie forced herself to look away, to focus on the line of kids waiting to play ring toss. Maybe she was imagining it. Maybe he was just another lonely man at the fair. But when she glanced back, he was closer. 15 meters now. His head tilted slightly, eyes narrow, scanning the crowd in small, methodical sweeps. When Lena turned toward the corn maze entrance, he shifted too, stepping aside to watch her reflection in a glass booth window. It wasn't random movement. It was pattern. Precision. Sophie's pulse quickened. She wanted to call someone, Otto, the fair security guard, but he was on the far end of the grounds dealing with a drunk couple near the rides. She looked for Clara, but the woman was busy serving a line of children. The man adjusted his cap. His mouth moved slightly, like he was whispering something to himself. And then, slowly, Lena began to realize she was being followed. Sophie could see it happen, the stiffening of her shoulders, the quick glances behind her. The way she clutched her phone tighter. Her pace quickened, then slowed, unsure whether to run or not. The man mirrored her again, pausing whenever she did, pretending to check his phone. Sophie's throat went dry. She couldn't stay silent any longer. "Excuse me," she called, waving toward the cotton candy cart. "Clara. Where's Otto?" Clara frowned, distracted. "At the beer tent, I think." "Why?" Sophie didn't answer. She stepped out from behind the counter, scanning the crowd, but in the few seconds she'd looked away, Lena was gone. So was the man in the grey jacket. The path ahead forked, one way toward the food stalls, the other toward the dimly lit exhibitors' parking area, where vendors kept their trucks. Sophie's chest tightened. A ripple of dread spread through her. The fair music, once cheerful, now sounded hollow and distant, like a carnival in a dream. She caught a glimpse of movement between the trucks, a flash of green fabric. The hoodie. Lena. Running. And behind her, the man. Calm. Focused. Still holding that untouched beer cup. Sophie didn't think. She shouted for Otto again, but her voice was lost in the noise. Her feet moved on their own. She left the lights of the fair behind and plunged into the dark. The exhibitor lot was a maze of shapes and shadows, box trucks, trailers, animal pens, and stacked crates. The music from the fair faded into a dull heartbeat behind her. Sophie stopped at the edge of the rows, heart hammering. Somewhere ahead, a metal door slammed. A muffled cry, faint, female. "Lena," she whispered. Silence. Then a rustle. A shadow shifted between two trailers, tall, deliberate. Sophie's breath caught, as the man stepped into the dim light spilling from a half-open door. His cap still low, his mouth twisting into the faintest smile when he saw her. "Looking for someone?" His voice was calm, almost polite. Sophie froze. Her mind screamed to run, but her legs wouldn't move. I saw you following that girl," she said, her voice shaking. "You should leave her alone." He tilted his head, studying her like an insect under glass. "You saw me. I was just walking. You were watching her." A pause. The corners of his mouth lifted slightly. "Then I suppose you were watching me, too." The words hung in the air like frost. Behind him, something moved, a flicker of green as Lena darted between two trucks, her shoes crunching on gravel. "Lena. This way." Sophie shouted. The girl turned, wide-eyed, terrified. The man's smile vanished. His eyes darkened. And for the first time, Sophie saw what lay beneath the calm surface, not anger, not panic, but certainty. The kind of look that said he'd already planned this moment. He turned slowly, his voice a low murmur. She shouldn't run. It makes it worse. Sophie took a step forward, pulse roaring in her ears. If you take another step, I'll. But before she could finish, he was gone, melting into the dark between the trailers as Lena stumbled toward her. Sophie caught the girl by the arm, pulling her into the open light near the food stalls. Lena was shaking, tears cutting through the dust on her cheeks. He said he wanted to show me something, she gasped. Said there was a hidden part of the fair no one knows about. I told him no, but he kept showing up. Sophie squeezed her shoulder. You're safe now. But even as she said it, she didn't believe it. Because when she turned back toward the parking area, she could still feel his eyes, somewhere in the dark, watching. And smiling. Part 2, The Missing. The police came within 10 minutes. By then, the fairgrounds had turned into a blur of flashing lights and confused voices. Parents gathered their children, vendors whispered to one another, and the Ferris wheel spun slowly in the distance, eerily silent now, its music turned off. Lena sat on a wooden bench near Sophie's booth, wrapped in a wool blanket someone had brought from a nearby stall. Her hands trembled as she held her phone. Sophie sat beside her, trying to keep her voice steady. It's all right. You're safe. Just tell them what happened. The officers, 2 men from the Rothenburg district unit, asked questions methodically, writing everything down. Lena told them about the man in the grey jacket, the cap, the way he'd followed her for almost an hour. She mentioned the message that came through on her phone right before she ran. Don't run. I just want to talk. She hadn't recognized the number. When she showed them the message, the older officer frowned. There's no caller ID. Foreign SIM, most likely. Can you trace it? Sophie asked. Eventually, he said, but his tone made it clear, not tonight. By the time the questioning ended, it was after 7. The fair had emptied out, lights still flickered, but most of the booths were closing. The laughter and music had drained away, replaced by murmurs and the occasional clang of metal as rides were powered down. Sophie stayed behind, unable to leave. Something about the whole thing felt wrong, too organized, too practiced. The way hands had moved, how he'd known exactly when to disappear. She caught sight of Otto Braun, the elderly security guard, standing by the fence, looking bewildered. His flashlight dangled from one hand. Never seen anything like that in 20 years, he muttered. Thought fairs were supposed to be happy places. They used to be, Sophie said quietly. From across the field, Clara approached, clutching her coat around her. They are saying the man had a car, a black van. Left right after the police arrived. Sophie's stomach dropped. You saw it? No. But one of the food vendors did. Said it didn't have headlights on until it reached the main road. Sophie turned toward the distant line of trees beyond the fairgrounds. For a moment, she thought she saw the faint glint of something metallic between the trunks, but when she blinked, it was gone. That night, she couldn't sleep. The images kept replaying, the way he smiled at her, the calm in his eyes, the deliberate turn of his head when Lena ran. Around midnight, her phone buzzed, a message from Clara. They found something in the parking area. Sophie didn't even bother changing out of her pajamas. She threw on a coat and ran the 5 blocks to the fairground. The gates were closed, but Clara waited by the fence, her breath fogging in the cold. The police are still there, she whispered. They said you should see it, since you were the one who noticed him. Inside the lot, flashlights cut through the fog. Officers were kneeling near the gravel where Lena had last been seen. One held up a small plastic bag. Inside was a broken phone, the green case cracked, the screen spiderwebbed with impact. It's hers, Sophie said softly. Another officer pointed toward a darker patch of gravel nearby. We also found this. Blood? Not much, just a few drops, half washed away by the evening drizzle. But it was enough. The older officer from earlier, whose badge read Krauser, walked over. There's more. A tire track near the edge of the lot, large vehicle, possibly a delivery van. Matches the witness statement. Do you think he took her? Clara asked quietly. Krauser's expression didn't change. We think he tried. Sophie felt the air thicken around her. What do you mean tried? Because according to Lena's mother, he said, Lena never came home. The next morning, Rothenberg woke to sirens. Posters went up within hours. Vermisst Lena Fischer, 17 Jahre alt. Her smiling school photo was suddenly everywhere, on lampposts, shop windows, even the bakery where Sophie bought her morning bread. Clara came by around noon, pale and shaken. They searched the fields all night. Found nothing. Sophie sat behind the ring toss counter, staring at the empty prizes. The fair had reopened, though quieter now, the laughter thinner. A speaker played cheerful music that felt wrong, almost cruel. She couldn't stop thinking about Lena's last words. He said he wanted to show me something. Hans Keller. That was the name the police had circulated. No local records. No fixed address. The ID he used to enter the fair as a vendor's helper turned out to be fake. By evening, Officer Krauser stopped by Sophie's booth. We've identified the van, he said. Black Mercedes Sprinter, no plates. Abandoned outside the town limits. Did you find him? He hesitated. Not yet. But there were notes inside. He pulled a small plastic evidence bag from his coat and handed it to her. Inside was a folded piece of paper covered in cramped handwriting. Sophie didn't want to touch it, but her eyes caught the top line anyway. Rothenberg Fair, high attendance, weak security. Best access points, northwest fence, exhibitor parking, food truck alley. Lower down. Targets, F, female, 15 to 20. Alone, distracted, predictable. Sophie's blood ran cold. There were more notes, dates, and what looked like initials beside them. And at the bottom of the page, one line that made her knees nearly buckle. Muller observed 2019 to 2021 reliable schedule, works ring toss booth. She looked up at Krauser. That's me. He nodded grimly. It seems he's been coming here longer than anyone realized. That night, Sophie walked home under the yellow glow of the street lamps. The cobblestones were slick with rain. Every sound, footsteps, laughter, wind, made her flinch. When she reached her apartment, the front door was unlocked. She froze, heart thundering. She was certain she'd locked it. Inside, everything looked untouched, except for the counter. A small paper cup sat there, half full of beer. Next to it was a single note, handwritten on plain white paper. You shouldn't have followed her. Her hands trembled. She looked around the room, the curtains fluttered slightly, the window cracked open just enough for someone to slip their hand through. Outside, the street was empty. But somewhere beyond the fog, she heard it, the faint creak of metal, slow and rhythmic. Like the Ferris wheel turning long after closing time. And beneath it, almost lost in the wind, came a whisper she could not mistake. Don't run. Part 3, The Vanishing. Rothenberg awoke under a ceiling of grey. The rain that had begun during the night turned the cobblestones into mirrors, and the town seemed to float on its own reflection. Every poster bearing Lena Fischer's face had grown soft at the edges, the ink bleeding like tears. Sophie Muller hadn't slept. She sat at her kitchen table, staring at the note that had been left beside the beer cup. You shouldn't have followed her. The police had taken it for prints, nothing. Whoever left it wore gloves. Officer Krauser wanted her to leave town for a few days, but Sophie refused. She couldn't stand the idea of running when Lena might still be alive somewhere close. By noon, the fairgrounds were empty again. The festival had been suspended indefinitely, vendors packed their caravans and rolled away under drizzle. The laughter, the smell of sugar, the bright songs, all gone, leaving only mud and the faint echo of a calliope organ that someone had forgotten to switch off. Sophie returned there anyway. She found Clara Schmidt near her stall, dismantling the cotton candy machine. "You shouldn't be here," Clara murmured. "They said the police cordoned off the western lot." "I know. Then why come back?" "Because I think he left something." Sophie didn't explain how she knew. It was a feeling, like a pressure in the air, a direction the fear itself was pointing. She followed it past the silent Ferris wheel, past the mud-streaked banners, to the back fence near the exhibitor lot where she'd last seen Hans. The gate was ajar. Beyond it lay a service road leading to a row of old storage sheds, once used for animals in the medieval fair centuries ago. The first two were locked. The third wasn't. Inside, the smell hit her, rust, oil, and something faintly organic. Dust floated through the beam of her phone light like snow. A mattress lay on the floor, stained. Nearby, a portable generator, and a crate filled with maps, fairground layouts from cities across Germany and Austria. Each one had circles drawn in red ink, labeled entry or exit, low light, blind spot. Sophie's pulse quickened. Beneath the maps was a black binder filled with photos. Dozens. Young women at fairs, laughing, holding prizes, unaware. A few she recognized from news articles about disappearances. And in the last sleeve, a picture of herself, taken from behind her booth. On the back, written neatly. Consistent. Alone. Will not resist if approached calmly. She stumbled back, hitting a crate. A small device clattered to the floor, an RF tag, like those used to track livestock. Taped beside it was a handwritten label, Test Rothenberg Trial 2, Subject F. A sound broke the silence. Footsteps on gravel outside. Sophie killed the flashlight and held her breath. A shadow filled the doorway. For one terrible second she thought it was him, but it was Officer Krauser, rain dripping from his hat. "I told you not to come here alone," he said. His eyes swept the room. "You were right, though. This is his base." He radioed for backup. Within minutes, more officers arrived, their flashlights cutting through the gloom. They catalogued everything, the maps, the photos, the tags. But there was no trace of Lena. Then one officer called from outside. "Sir. You'll want to see this." Behind the shed, half hidden under a torp, was a trapdoor built into the ground. Wooden, weather-stained, secured by a rusted padlock that had already been broken. Krauser pulled it open. Cold air breathed up from the darkness below. A narrow staircase led down into the earth. Sophie followed despite his protests. The steps opened into a low tunnel lined with stone, the remains of an old drainage system that once connected the fairgrounds to the town wall. The air smelled of soil and metal. 20 meters in, they found a chair. And chains. By evening, the place was crawling with police. News vans gathered outside the gates. The town's mayor made statements about safety and vigilance, his voice trembling beneath the weight of disbelief. For Rothenberg, the fairy tale had shattered. Krauser told Sophie later that the tunnel extended nearly half a kilometer before collapsing. They found tire tracks from a wheelbarrow, boot prints, and remnants of food packaging. But no Lena. No Hans. "He's done this before," Krauser said. "Every time, he builds a routine, weeks of observation, one attempt, then he moves on. He's systematic. Maybe not working alone." Sophie asked, "So he's part of something bigger?" Krauser hesitated. "We think so. There's chatter about a network, people trading information about fares, routes, targets. We've seen similar cases near Salzburg and Graz. That night, Sophie stayed with Clara, too afraid to return home. Rain beat against the windows. At some point after midnight, she woke to the sound of music, faint, distant, familiar. A tune from the fair. She went to the window. The street was empty except for the reflection of her own face. But somewhere beyond the walls, the calliope played 3 notes and stopped. Days turned into weeks. The fairgrounds were dismantled, mud returned to grass. Police divers searched the Tauber River, drones combed the woods. Nothing. Then, one afternoon, Sophie received a call. It was Officer Krauser. "We found the van." He met her near the edge of the forest outside Kreglingen, 10 kilometers north. The vehicle was half buried in leaves, as if it had been there for months. Inside, rope, gloves, and another binder. Krauser opened it for her. On the first page, typed, organized, was a heading. Client Directives, Autumn 2024, a region DACH. Below, lists of initials, locations, and payment codes. It wasn't one man. It was an operation. At the back, a final entry, handwritten in the same script as before. Rothenburg, compromised. Witness identified. Proceed to stage 2. Subject Muller knows too much. Krauser insisted she enter protective custody. Sophie agreed, but the following night she vanished from the safe house. When police forced the door, they found no signs of struggle, only her coat, folded neatly on the chair, and a note. "If Lena's out there, she deserves someone still looking." She had left her phone behind. No digital trace, no camera sightings. Just gone. Clara still visits the bakery where Sophie once bought her bread. She swears she's seen her, once, near the station, wearing a grey jacket and a cap pulled low. But when she called her name, the woman didn't turn around. Spring came to Rothenburg. The posters faded, new festivals filled the calendar. Life moved on, as life always does after horror. Then, one foggy morning, the maintenance crew reopening the fairgrounds found something wedged beneath the Ferris wheel platform, a child's green hoodie, stiff with dried mud. On its pocket was a patch, the emblem of Rothenburg High. Inside the hood, tucked like a secret, was a folded photograph. It showed Sophie Muller at the ringtoss booth, smiling, handing a prize to a young girl. The photo had been taken from a distance, slightly out of focus, as though by someone hiding behind the booth. On the back, in the same small, careful handwriting. "One found. One left to go." To this day, the locals say that every October, when the new fair opens, a grey-jacketed man can be seen at dusk, standing by the northern row where the ringtoss used to be. He never plays, never speaks. He only watches. Some believe it's Hans Keller, returned to hunt again. Others whisper it's Sophie Muller herself, still searching for Lena, or for something she can never find. Either way, when the music stops and the fog thickens, the workers hurry to close the gates. Because the fair always comes back. And so do the ones who never left. Story 3, The Rest Stop in the Fog. Part 1, The Road Through the Ardennes. The fog was alive that night. It rolled through the trees like smoke from something smoldering deep within the forest, curling around the headlights of Lucas Moreau's truck until the light itself seemed to drown. The air tasted metallic, the way it does before snow, and the engine's hum became the only proof that he hadn't driven straight into a dream. Lucas had been on the road for nearly 15 hours, frozen goods from Paris to Liège, a route he knew well enough to drive in his sleep. But tonight felt different. Lonelier. Hungrier. He checked the dashboard clock. 2:43 a.m. The thermos beside him was empty. His bladder wasn't. When the green highway sign appeared out of the mist, Air du Bois de la Nuit, 1 kilometer, he exhaled in relief. He'd stopped there once years ago, a quiet little rest area surrounded by pine forest. Nothing fancy, just a pair of vending machines and a restroom block. But as he turned off the highway ramp, the road swallowed him whole. The parking lot was half buried under mist. One sodium lamp flickered near the restroom building, throwing long, crooked shadows that bent across the asphalt. Construction barriers ringed half the lot, plastered with peeling signs in French and Dutch, "Fermé pour renovation." "Aucun service disponible." Lukas frowned. "Closed for renovation." And yet, light glowed faintly through the small window of the men's restroom. He parked near the only visible lamppost, killed the engine, and sat listening. No other vehicles. No wind. Just the slow hiss of cooling metal. He told himself it was fine, probably a janitor working late, or a utility check. Still, the back of his neck prickled. He grabbed his flashlight from the glove box and stepped out. The gravel crunched under his boots, each sound swallowed instantly by fog. The forest loomed at the edge of the lot, black and endless. Somewhere far off, a branch snapped. He told himself it was an animal. The restroom door groaned as he pushed it open. The smell hit him first, bleach and rust and something faintly sweet, like burnt sugar. The flickering fluorescent lights gave the tiled walls a pale green hue, the color of hospitals and old morgues. 3 stalls lined the left wall. 2 were open. The middle one was locked from the inside. The mirror above the cracked sink was spotted with corrosion. The paper towel dispenser hung open, empty. And then Lukas saw the backpack. It lay half unzipped near the sink, a good one, the kind used by long-distance hikers. Inside, an iPhone stood upright, camera lens aimed toward the stalls. The screen glowed, red recording dot blinking. 4 hours, 12 minutes, 47 seconds. Lukas froze. Someone had been filming for 4 hours. Here. He picked it up carefully, fingertips avoiding the glass. The battery was almost dead. He scrubbed through the timeline. Mostly static and darkness. Then, movement. At 11:09 p.m., a man appeared in frame. Grey jacket. Dark beret pulled low. He stood perfectly still, facing the locked stall. The frame wobbled slightly, as if the person holding the camera had adjusted it at the last moment, then stepped away. 3 heavy knocks. Each one echoed unnaturally loud against the tiles. A voice came from behind the stall door, male, young, panicked. "Please, leave me alone." The man in the beret tilted his head, listening. Then, slowly, he reached into his jacket and drew out something long and thin. A metal wire, maybe a coat hanger straightened into a hook. He slipped it through the gap of the stall door and began to work the lock. "Stop. Don't, please." Click. The door swung open. The camera jolted violently, as if someone brushed past it. The screen filled with ceiling tiles for a moment, then the world went sideways. All that remained were the sounds. A muffled struggle. Something heavy dragged across tile. Then footsteps receding. Finally, only the buzz of the dying fluorescent light. Lukas's mouth went dry. His own reflection stared back at him from the mirror, ghost pale under the light. He turned toward the locked stall. Still closed. For a long moment, he couldn't move. His brain screamed get out, but his body stayed rooted. He crouched, shining the flashlight under the stall door. Blood? Fresh? A thin trail of it leading toward the threshold. And something else. A fingernail, broken clean in half. He staggered back, breath short. The metallic scent in the air was suddenly unbearable. And then, from inside that same stall, a sound broke the silence. A ringtone. Cheerful, synthetic, absurdly out of place, 3 notes repeated twice, then stopped. 3 soft pings followed, text message notifications. Someone, or something, was in there. Lukas's flashlight trembled in his grip. He stared at the stall, half expecting to see a hand slide out from beneath the door. Instead, the sound that came next froze him completely. Footsteps. Outside. Slow, deliberate, crunching through gravel toward the restroom entrance. He turned toward the door just as the handle twitched. The lock rattled once, twice, then began to turn. Through the narrow crack, he saw a silhouette, tall, motionless, and above it, the faint outline of a beret. The man from the video. Lukas's pulse exploded. He shoved the door hard. It slammed outward, connecting with something solid. A grunt of surprise. Lukas bolted, slamming the lock and pressing his weight against it as the handle jerked violently. No words. Just the pounding, slow at first, then harder, faster, until the whole frame shook. He could hear the man's breathing on the other side, steady, controlled, too calm for what it was. Then it stopped. Silence. Lukas listened. Nothing. Until a faint scraping began at the back of the building, metal against metal. He realized with horror, the maintenance hatch. Someone was trying to pry it open. He flicked his flashlight toward the ceiling, and froze again. Above the flickering lights, a soft rustling. Movement in the crawl space. He wasn't alone anymore. He ran. The main door burst open, and the night swallowed him in fog. The cold bit through his clothes. The parking lot was barely visible, just shapes and faint glimmers of wet asphalt. He sprinted toward the truck, boots slipping on gravel, lungs burning. Somewhere behind him, the restroom door creaked open again. A single set of footsteps followed, slow at first, then quickening. Lukas's hands shook as he fumbled with the keys. A clang echoed. He'd tripped over something metallic, a dropped pipe maybe. The sound rang like a gunshot. The footsteps broke into a run. He tore the driver's door open, threw himself inside, and turned the key. The engine roared. Headlights cut through the mist, and froze on a figure standing 5 meters ahead. Grey jacket. Beret. Face half in shadow. The man didn't move. Didn't flinch. Just raised one hand, palm forward, a gesture that could have been a warning. Or a promise. Lukas slammed the gearshift into reverse, tires spitting gravel, the truck jolting backward toward the exit ramp. The man stayed where he was, shrinking into the fog as the lights receded. Lukas didn't breathe until the highway opened in front of him again, black and endless. Only then did he grab his CB radio, voice cracking as he shouted for help. "This is truck 42J, northbound on E25, I need assistance. There's been an attack. There's blood, someone's still there, please, anyone, respond." The radio hissed with static. Then a voice, distant but calm. "Say again, 42J. Where are you located?" He glanced at the GPS. The screen flickered, the signal dropping in and out. Bois de la Nuit rest area, off the Ardennes stretch. Static again. Then, through the hiss, a new voice, deeper, colder. "I told you not to follow." Lukas stared at the radio in disbelief, his throat closing around the scream that never came. The police met him 20 minutes later, at a dimly lit service station outside Bastogne. 2 officers from the Police Fédérale, one young, nervous, the other older, eyes heavy with fatigue. Their cruiser looked out of place under the buzzing fluorescent lights, the red and blue paint smeared with road grime. Lukas could barely get the words out. He'd driven trucks through storms, slept in frozen cabins, watched animals dart across highways, but he had never seen blood like that. Never smelled it. The older officer, Commandant Hervé Lemaire, listened quietly, arms crossed as Lukas explained, the phone, the video, the man in the beret. When he finished, Lemaire asked one question. Why didn't you leave sooner? Lukas blinked. What? You said you saw blood. You heard someone in distress. Yet you stayed to check. Why? The younger officer shot Lemaire a sharp look, but Lukas only shook his head. Because I thought maybe someone was still alive. Maybe I could help. Lemaire nodded slowly. Then perhaps you did. They followed Lukas's truck back along the fog-choked highway. By the time they reached Bois de la Nuit, it was nearly 4 a.m. The mist was thicker now, pressing against the windshields like frosted glass. The only light came from their headlights and the single flickering lamp outside the restroom building. The lot looked exactly as Lukas remembered, silent, empty, wrong. Lemaire ordered the younger officer, Inspector Dupont, to radio for backup. 2 more patrol cars were on the way, but it would take time to reach them through the forest roads. Stay in your vehicle, Lemaire told Lukas. Do not open the door unless I tell you. Lukas watched from behind the windshield as they crossed the lot, flashlights sweeping over the wet asphalt. The beam caught the orange construction cones, the warped reflection of the restroom window, and the small trail of drag marks leading from the building toward the edge of the trees. His stomach turned. He hadn't noticed that before. 10 minutes passed. Then 15. Finally, Lemaire signaled for Lukas to join them. The air inside the restroom felt colder than before, like the temperature had dropped several degrees. The fluorescent lights buzzed weakly, casting long shadows. The backpack still lay by the sink. The iPhone had gone dark, battery drained. And then there were the marks. Bloody smears across the tiles, subtle but unmistakable. A streak on the wall near the door. A faint handprint, pressed against the mirror at shoulder height. Dupont gagged quietly and turned away. Lemaire crouched near the locked stall, studying the scratches in the floor. He didn't touch them. He didn't need to. The story was already written in those lines, the desperate struggle of something dragged, resisting, then going limp. He looked up at Lukas. This video. You still have it in your head? Lukas nodded mutely. Good. Because when we get the lab to recover it, I'll need you to confirm it's the same man. The one in the beret. Yes. And if he's still out there. Lemaire's eyes hardened. Then he's been doing this for a long time. Outside, Dupont's radio crackled. Backup had arrived. 2 more patrol cars rolled in, lights dimmed to preserve night vision. A forensic team began taping off the scene, their voices low, professional. Lemaire took Lukas aside. You should go to Bastogne Station. They'll take your statement again. I'll stay until dawn. Lukas hesitated. The idea of leaving felt wrong. Commandant, what if he's watching? What if he comes back? Lemaire looked at the fog beyond the lamppost. For a moment, his face seemed carved from stone. He probably already has. They drove the highway in silence. The fog thinned slightly, enough to see the pale glow of dawn behind the trees. Lukas sat in the back of the cruiser, staring out the window. He thought of the video again, the calm, deliberate way the man had waited before unlocking the store. The precision of it. Commandant, Lukas said quietly, that backpack. The phone. The ID, did you find a name? Lemaire nodded. Etienne Dubois. 28. French national. Backpacker. His parents reported him missing 4 days ago, after he failed to check in from Namur. Lukas swallowed. So he's the one in the video. Most likely. They drove a while longer before Lukas spoke again. The man in the beret, he didn't chase me. He could have. He just stood there. Lemaire's hands tightened on the steering wheel. You said he raised a hand, yes. Like he wanted me to stop. Lemaire's expression darkened. Then he was marking you. Marking me. 4 later. At Bastogne Station, the paperwork blurred together. Statements. Descriptions. Sketches. Lukas did his best to recall every detail, the color of the jacket, the shape of the beret, the height. By sunrise, he was exhausted. Lemaire offered him a cot in one of the break rooms, but Lukas refused. Sleep meant closing his eyes, and closing his eyes meant seeing that video again. Instead, he wandered the hallway, past bulletin boards lined with faded photos. He froze when one caught his attention. It showed another rest stop, different forest, same atmosphere. Underneath. Aire de Namur Nord, missing person, J. de Klerk, 2022. Beside it, another. Aire du Condros, disappearance, A. Weber, 2023. Both had the same handwritten note attached in red ink. Possibly connected, MO identical. Lukas's stomach turned. It wasn't just Bois de la Nuit. It was a pattern. When Lemaire returned, Lukas confronted him. These photos. They are all rest stops. Lemaire nodded. Yes. 23 over the last 5 years. Belgium, France, Netherlands. All remote, all under renovation or temporary closure at the time of the disappearance. And you think it's him? I think he's part of something. Maybe the same man, maybe not. But the method, the staging, it's too organized for a drifter. Lukas hesitated. Staging. Lemaire leaned against the desk. He doesn't just kill. He observes. Watches patterns. Waits for solitude. Leaves traces meant to be found. The unlocked door, the half-lit light, the phone still recording. It's choreography. Why? To make sure someone like you sees it. Lukas felt the blood drain from his face. Why me? Wrong place, right time. He needs witnesses. He leaves stories behind, not bodies. Stories. Yes. Messages. We've found similar ones before, phrases carved into wood or scratched onto tiles. Always in French. Lemaire looked directly at him. Do you remember anything written in that restroom? Lukas thought hard. The tiles. The door. The mirror. He froze. There was something near the handprint. I didn't notice until now. A word. What word? Lukas's throat felt tight. Regard. Lemaire frowned. Look. Yes. Just that. The commandant's face hardened. Then he wanted you to see him. By the time Lukas finally left the station, the morning sun had burned away most of the fog. The world looked ordinary again, too ordinary. Trucks passed along the E25, their engines roaring like distant thunder. He should have felt safe. But he didn't. When he climbed into his cab, something glinted on the driver's seat. A small, metallic object. A coat hanger wire, bent straight. His breath caught. He looked around the parking lot. Only a handful of cars, no one nearby. He picked up the wire with a tissue, heart pounding. Underneath it, taped neatly to the fabric, a torn scrap of paper. 5 words, written in careful block letters. Still watching. Keep driving, Lukas. He didn't remember starting the engine. Didn't remember merging onto the highway. Only the blur of trees and the endless grey ribbon of road. His CB radio hissed softly beside him. He didn't dare touch it. The fog had begun to return, creeping low along the asphalt. He flicked on the headlights, and froze. On the far side of the median, parked on the shoulder facing the opposite direction, sat a white van. No plates. No lights. As he passed, the driver's door opened slightly. And for a fraction of a second, Lukas saw a familiar shape, grey jacket, dark beret, head turning just enough for him to glimpse a smile in the reflection of his own headlights. Morning came colourless. The mist that had ruled the night turned to a dull grey haze clinging to the pine tops, and the rest area looked almost harmless in daylight. A patch of cracked asphalt, a squat concrete restroom block, a vandalized vending machine. To anyone passing by, it would seem empty, quiet, ordinary. But Lukas Morrow knew what the light couldn't erase. He had promised Commandant Lemaire he'd stay away, yet the promise meant little once the nightmares started. Every time he closed his eyes he saw the door unlocking again, the wire twisting, the camera falling. By mid-morning, he was driving back toward Bois de la Nuit, thermos untouched, stomach tight. 2 police vans already waited there. Yellow tape fluttered weakly in the cold wind. Technicians in white coveralls moved like ghosts through the mist, measuring, photographing, labeling. Lemaire spotted him at once. "I told you not to return." "I couldn't sleep," Lukas said. The commandant studied him a moment, then sighed. "Stay behind the line. If you faint, I won't catch you." Inside, the air was sharper, disinfectant, ozone, blood turned to iron dust. The floor gleamed where the cleaners had washed it, but the grout between tiles was still pink. A forensic officer called out from the stall. "We have something." They had forced the door the night before, but in daylight, new details emerged, faint chemical stains near the hinge, and on the inner wall, tiny punctures where a spray nozzle had been fitted. Lemaire crouched to inspect it. Aerosol delivery system. Homemade, probably chloroform derivative. He knocked them out before opening the door. Lukas felt bile rise in his throat. So Etienne never stood a chance. "No," Lemaire said quietly. "And you nearly joined him." At the sink area, another officer had laid out Etienne Dubois' belongings, passport, wallet, a small journal sealed in plastic. The cover was soaked but the writing inside was legible. Lemaire flipped through pages covered in tidy handwriting. Etienne had kept notes on his hitchhiking trip across Belgium. Lists of campsites, sketches of road signs, names of people who gave him rides. The last entry stopped mid-sentence. October 10th, rest stop called Bois de la Nuit. Strange atmosphere. One other car here, white van, no plates. Man inside staring. We'll write more later. Nothing after that. Lemaire closed the book. We'll send this to the family. They deserve to know he kept trying to document everything. Lukas forced himself to look around. The once flickering lamp was off, power to the building had been cut completely. Outside, the forest breathed softly, indifferent. A forensic photographer passed by muttering. Same pattern as Namur and Condros, identical spray mount, same spacing of the hooks. Lemaire looked at her. "Hooks?" She pointed upward. Along the ceiling, faint rust rings marked where something had once hung, chains, maybe, or cables. He uses existing structures. Efficient, minimal noise. Lukas stepped back instinctively. The room seemed to close around him, every wall humming with memory. Outside, the crime scene tent had become a command post. Maps spread across folding tables, pins marking locations along the E25 and E411 motorways. Strings of red yarn linked rest stops in Belgium, Luxembourg, the French Ardennes. Lemaire gestured at the cluster. Each pin is a disappearance. Truckers, backpackers, tourists. Always between midnight and 4 a.m., always on foggy nights. We think he times it, waits for meteorological alerts when visibility drops below 30 meters. So he hunts when no one can see him, Lukas said. Exactly. And he always leaves one witness. Someone who escapes, someone who talks. Lukas stared at him. Why? Why risk exposure? Lemaire rubbed a hand across his face. Control. He needs the story told. It's not enough to kill, he wants to be remembered. An analyst approached holding a tablet. Commandant, we recovered partial data from the iPhone. There's a second video. They gathered around the screen. The first 30 seconds were static, Etienne adjusting the camera, humming softly, complaining in French about the cold. Then headlights flared through the restroom window, and a voice, deep, smooth, unmistakably deliberate, spoke from outside. Bonsoir, Monsieur Dubois. Long way from home, aren't you? Etienne's voice trembled. Who are you? How do you know my name? You left it on your pack. I thought maybe you'd want company. The video cut abruptly, replaced by the same image Lukas had seen, the man at the stall door. Lemaire's jaw tightened. He enjoys conversation first. It's part of the ritual. Lukas backed away, hands shaking. The sound of his own heartbeat filled his ears. He was speaking French perfectly. Not accented. Local. Lemaire nodded grimly. That means he knows these roads better than we do. By late afternoon, the forensics crew packed up. Evidence bags disappeared into vans, yellow tape came down, and the rest stop was left to the fog again. Lemaire stood by the guardrail, smoking, eyes on the tree line. Lukas joined him. You think he's still nearby? The commandant didn't answer immediately. Men like him don't leave. They relocate within the same radius. There's comfort in familiarity. Lukas followed his gaze. The forest stretched endlessly, each tree identical. How do you find someone who lives inside that? You don't, Lemaire said. You wait for him to come back. That evening, Lukas checked into a roadside motel on the edge of town. The receptionist recognized him from the news report already circulating online. Camionneur témoin dans une affaire de disparition. He muttered a thank you and took his key. Room 12 smelled of damp wood and lemon detergent. He locked the door twice, pulled the curtains tight, and tried to rest. At 1 a.m., a noise woke him, soft static. His CB radio, sitting on the dresser, had switched on by itself. Highway clear tonight, a male voice said. Perfect visibility. Lukas froze. The channel number blinked 42.3, the same frequency he'd used to call for help. He reached for the power switch, but before he could touch it, the voice returned. You took something that isn't yours, Lukas. Static swallowed the rest. The radio clicked off. He sat in darkness for a full minute before daring to breathe again. Morning brought police activity at the motel. A cleaner had found a small package addressed to Lukas Moreau, left at reception by a man in work clothes. Inside, a USB stick and a single Polaroid. The photo showed Lukas's truck, parked outside his apartment in Liege. It had been taken 2 days earlier, before the night in the Ardennes. Written across the bottom in black marker. You were chosen because you stop. Lemaire arrived within the hour, grim-faced. He's tracking you. Maybe using your delivery logs, maybe GPS tampering. We'll get you protection, but you need to change routes. Lukas stared at the Polaroid. The idea of protection felt meaningless. This man always seemed one step ahead. How many others has he watched like this? We don't know. Lemaire's voice softened. But he's watching now, which means he'll slip. They always do. That night, Lukas sat in a police safe house outside Namur. Through the window he could see the E411 highway winding through forest, red taillights fading into fog. He tried to tell himself he was safe, that walls, locks, and armed officers meant something. But when he looked down, he noticed something small on the sill outside the glass. A folded piece of white paper held by condensation. He opened the window just enough to pull it inside. Written neatly in blue ink, the same controlled handwriting as before. The forest never forgets a visitor. Below it, a date. Tomorrow's. And a location. Aire du Renard Rouge, 3 o'clock. At dawn, Lemaire examined the note, jaw tight. He's baiting us. He wants an audience. You're going, Lukas said. We are both going, Lemaire corrected. We'll be ready this time, plainclothes units, thermal cameras, drones. Lukas hesitated. What if it's not bait? What if it's a schedule? Lemaire met his eyes. Then we'll finally see how he operates. Lukas looked toward the window, where mist already crept across the hills like a living thing. Somewhere out there, beyond the reach of headlights, the man in the beret was waiting again, calm, patient, certain. And the forest, as always, was watching. Part 2, The Renard Rouge Incident. Section 1, The Setup. The road to the Aire du Renard Rouge wound like a ribbon of steel through the Ardennes, the fog hanging low enough to brush the treetops. By evening, the forest had turned to black silhouettes, and the cold rain whispered against the windshield of the unmarked van. Inside, Lukas sat beside Commandant Lemaire, both men silent except for the hum of the heater and the steady ping of rain on the roof. Ahead of them, a convoy of plainclothes officers followed in staggered intervals, 2 vehicles behind, 1 ahead, 1 parked at the rest stop hours earlier under the guise of a maintenance truck. Drones would launch at midnight. Infrared cameras had been mounted on the restroom building and the adjacent utility shed. The trap was set. But everyone in that van knew that trap was a generous word. The killer, the man the media had already dubbed L'homme au béret, had orchestrated every encounter on his own terms. The message left for Lukas wasn't a taunt, it was an invitation. The Aire du Renard Rouge sat at kilometre marker 117 of the E411, deep in the forest, surrounded by red-leafed maples that glowed faintly even in the dark. A small cafe once served travelers there, now boarded shut with warped plywood. 2 vending machines stood outside, one still working, the other smashed open and rusted from rain. Lemaire's tactical officer, Lieutenant Verhoeven, briefed the team as they parked. 2 perimeters. Inner ring near the restroom block, outer along the tree line. No headlights once in position. Drones in the air by 2:30. Command vehicle will monitor all feeds from the north lot. He turned to Lukas. You understand, Monsieur Moreau, this is a controlled environment. You'll stay inside the command vehicle until we signal. No heroics. Lukas nodded. He wasn't planning any. His pulse, however, had other ideas. When the briefing ended, Lemaire lingered beside him. You don't have to be here, the commandant said. I know, Lukas replied. But he sent the note to me. He'll expect to see me. Lemaire studied him, then nodded. All right. But if you feel something's wrong, anything, you tell me before you act. Understood. Yes, Commandant. By midnight, the rest stop had gone silent. The last passing car had faded down the highway 20 minutes earlier, leaving only the sigh of wind through trees. The drones hovered unseen above the canopy, their thermal cameras painting the darkness in gradients of red and gold on the monitors inside the command van. Lukas sat between 2 operators, watching the screens flicker. Every sound, the static hiss of radio chatter, the faint hum of the generators, set his nerves on edge. At 0:47, one of the outer perimeter officers reported faint movement near the tree line, thermal contact. Possibly animal. The drone camera zoomed. A wild boar, heat signature bright and harmless. False alarm. At 1:25, Verhoeven rotated one of the feeds toward the parking lot. There, north entrance. Something metallic just reflected light. Lukas leaned closer. A distant glint. Could be rain on metal. Could be eyes. Could be the curve of a van door. No movement followed. Lemaire murmured, he knows how to wait. At 2:03, the fog thickened, a low tide of white rolling between the trees. Visibility on the cameras dropped by half. Drones began losing signal intermittently. Verhoeven cursed softly. Moisture's interfering with thermal resolution. Maintain altitude, Lemaire said. We'll rely on ground units until it clears. But it didn't clear. By 2:15, the monitors showed little more than static and ghost shapes. And then, through the static, one of the cameras near the restroom caught motion, a figure stepping out of the fog, faintly luminescent in the infrared spectrum. Lukas's breath caught. That's him. The figure moved with deliberate slowness, not sneaking, not rushing. Just walking, head slightly tilted, like listening for something. He stopped in front of the restroom door, and looked up directly at the hidden camera, as though aware of its lens. Zoom, Lemaire ordered. The image sharpened just enough to reveal the beret, the collar of a grey coat, and the faint white line of a smile. Then the feed went black. Drone 3 offline, Verhoeven said, tension creeping into his voice. Lost visual, lost thermal. Reboot. I'm trying, no signal. It's like, he stopped, frowning. It's like interference from a local transmitter. Lukas stared at the dark screen. He's jamming us. Lemaire's jaw tightened. How would he have the frequency? The question hung in the air unanswered. Then came the radio crackle. A whisper of static, followed by a voice so low it was almost gentle. Bonsoir, Commandant. You brought company tonight. Every head turned toward the comms console. The frequency wasn't one of theirs. The voice was broadcasting directly onto the local emergency channel. I see you found my last note. Good. I was worried Lukas might forget me. Lukas felt ice in his veins. He's on our channel. He knows my name. You should have stayed on the road, mon ami. The forest prefers silence. Lemaire snapped, trace that signal. Verhoeven's fingers flew across the console. Source within 100 meters, maybe the restroom structure itself. Lemaire grabbed his radio. All ground units, converge on the restroom building. Do not engage until visual confirmation. Outside, boots crunched on gravel. Shadows moved through the fog like wraiths, rifles raised. Lukas watched the monitors, heart hammering. The restroom appeared through the fog as a pale blur under a single dim lamp. Nothing moved. Then something clicked inside the command van. The door lock. He turned. The latch had slid shut by itself. Lemaire, he said slowly. The door. Before he could finish, the lights inside the van flickered and went out. Monitors blinked to black. A smell of ozone filled the air, burnt plastic and cold metal. Generators down, Verhoeven barked. Backup coming online. But Lukas wasn't listening. From outside, faint through the walls, he heard a sound that turned his stomach, tapping. 3 slow knocks on the van door. Exactly the rhythm from Etienne's video. Lemaire drew his pistol and motioned for silence. Another tap followed, lower down this time, closer to Lukas's side of the vehicle. He raised his eyes toward the window. The fog outside glowed faintly from the distant security light. A shape passed across it, not walking but drifting, as if the fog itself had a body. Then a whisper came through the metal. You really should have stayed asleep, Lukas. Lemaire flung the door open, weapon ready. Nothing. Just fog and the echo of boots from the outer ring rushing toward them. Signal again. Verhoeven called from the console, where the monitors had flickered back to life. Movement, southwest lot. On the screen, a figure sprinted across the asphalt, heading toward the forest edge. Go! Lemaire shouted. The team scattered. Lukas followed instinctively, adrenaline drowning fear. The fog swallowed them after 10 meters, and the world became a maze of white and shadow. Ahead, he heard branches snapping, boots striking gravel. Someone was shouting in French, "Halt! Police!" Followed by 2 sharp cracks of gunfire. Then silence. Only the fog remained. When they found the officer who'd fired, he was standing rigid by the tree line, eyes wide. "Did you hit him?" Lemaire demanded. The man shook his head. "No blood. He was right there, and then he wasn't. Like he vanished." Lemaire cursed under his breath. "Sweep the forest. Grid formation. Nobody leaves until sunrise." Lukas stood by the van, trembling, trying to piece together what he'd heard. That voice hadn't been a recording. It had been live, close, human. But one question burned louder than the rest. How had the man known their exact frequency? Their schedule? Their arrival time? The realization hit like cold water. "He's inside the operation," Lukas whispered. "Someone fed him our comms data." Lemaire turned sharply. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying he knew about this sting before we even set it up." The commandant's face darkened. "Then we are not hunting one man. We are hunting a network." Section 2, The Descent. The fog didn't lift with dawn. By 5 a.m., the forest around the Aire du Renard Rouge still looked like a painting half erased, all color drained, the trees shapeless and wet. The search teams had been combing the area for 3 hours with no trace of l'homme au béret. Commandant Lemaire stood near the restroom building, his coat glistening with dew. Lukas sat on the hood of a police van, clutching a paper cup of coffee that had long gone cold. Nobody spoke. Every radio hissed softly, haunted by static. Then Verhoeven emerged from behind the building, holding a torn piece of rubber hose and a small steel cylinder in a gloved hand. "Commandant, you need to see this." Lemaire frowned. "What is it?" "Homemade aerosol disperser," Verhoeven replied. "Industrial valve, pressure canister. Empty. He used it to release something, maybe chloroform vapor. That's how he subdues victims." Lukas's stomach twisted. "You think he used it last night?" "Most likely." Verhoeven gestured toward the ventilation grate above the restroom's side door. "Fits the pattern we've seen, dispersed through air ducts or under stall doors. Victims get dizzy, lose balance, blackout. No struggle, no noise." Lemaire's eyes darkened. "And we walked straight into it." Verhoeven hesitated, then added quietly, "There's more. One of the drones crashed about 50 meters south, behind the maintenance shed. The feed cut when the infrared camera overheated. We found the body of a fox, throat slit, left in front of the drone." "A fox?" Lukas asked, confused. Verhoeven nodded grimly. "The Renard Rouge, the red fox. He left it as a signature." When sunlight finally began to bleed through the fog, the officers gathered near the shed. The structure had once housed cleaning supplies and electrical panels, but the door was now sealed with a chain and a rusted padlock. Lemaire ordered it cut. As the bolt cutter snapped, the smell hit first, rot, damp wood, and something metallic underneath. Inside, the shed was nearly empty except for a trapdoor at the center, half covered by a stained top. On it sat a small cassette recorder, and a roll of black electrical tape. The recorder clicked on the moment Verhoeven touched it. A man's voice filled the air, low and unhurried. "Bonjour, Lukas. You drove past this place 8 times before tonight. I wondered how long it would take before you came back." The tape word, the voice calm, deliberate. "Down there, under your feet, is what remains of those who didn't drive away in time. But you already know that, don't you? Because you saw it once before." Lukas's hands began to tremble. "What does he mean?" You remember the fire on the E25 last winter? The woman in the white van. You stopped. You heard her scream. But you didn't open the door. Lukas froze. His throat felt like sandpaper. That accident, he hadn't told anyone about it. A van had overturned, caught fire before rescuers arrived. He'd stood by helpless, shouting, unable to reach the woman trapped inside. The tape continued. You left her there, Lukas? I didn't. I took her away from the fire. She's the reason I do this. We are not so different, you and I. Then the tape ended with the faint click of a stop button, as if the speaker had been right there, watching. Lemaire's gaze shifted to Lukas, measuring him. You never mentioned that incident. Lukas managed, I didn't think it mattered. It wasn't a crime, it was an accident. Not to him, Lemaire said. To him it was a beginning. They lifted the top. Beneath it, the trapdoor led to a narrow staircase descending into darkness. The air rising from below was cold, stale, and heavy with the smell of metal and earth. Flashlights, Lemaire ordered. Verhoeven descended first, weapon drawn, light beam slicing through dust. Lukas followed, heart hammering so loud it drowned out his own footsteps. The stairs ended in a concrete chamber no larger than a single-car garage. On one wall, hooks hung in neat rows. From each hook dangled an object, keys, watches, bracelets, even folded driver's licenses sealed in plastic. Evidence. The trophies of the dead. Lukas's flashlight trembled as he moved closer. Each ID bore a name, Dutch, Belgian, French, faces smiling obliviously from passport photos. At the center of the room stood an old table with something etched into its surface, a map of Western Europe. Red thread connected certain points, highway rest stops, border crossings, and isolated forest roads. Beneath each thread was a date. The earliest read 2015. 7 years, Lemaire whispered. 7 years of abductions. He's been operating across half the continent. Lukas pointed to one of the red dots near Liege. That's where Etienne went missing. And this one, Verhoeven said, tracing a line toward Holland, matches a disappearance from last year. 2 students, night bus route. The map was no longer just evidence. It was a confession. Then Verhoeven crouched near a corner where a camera tripod was half buried under dust. The lens was still attached. He pressed the eject button on the side, and a small SD card popped free. Lemaire took it carefully. We'll view this at the command post. But Lukas wasn't listening. His eyes had fixed on the far wall. Someone had painted words there, in uneven strokes of red. Silence is consent. Back above ground, technicians set up a monitor inside the command van to review the footage. The SD card contained several short clips, each marked with a date. Most were blank until the final file. The timestamp read 2:12 a.m., barely an hour before the team arrived. The video began with static. Then, a view from inside the very same command van, the one Lukas and Lemaire had occupied that night. The angle was slightly off, as if filmed through a small hole or hidden lens. They watched themselves on screen, Lemaire leaning over the radio, Lukas sitting by the monitor. Then, from behind the camera, a faint chuckle. Bonsoir, Lukas. The sound was unmistakable, the same voice from the radio transmission. Lemaire's knuckles whitened. He was inside our perimeter. Verhoeven muttered, he installed a hidden camera before we even arrived. Maybe during construction months ago. Lukas's chest tightened. He's not improvising. He's orchestrating. The clip ended abruptly, mid-frame, with a flash of white static. Lemaire slammed the laptop shut. We pull out. Now? We'll regroup at headquarters and review the full data in isolation. He's monitoring everything we do here. But the withdrawal wasn't immediate. As the team packed up, Verhoeven called from the perimeter. "Commandant, we've found tracks. Heavy boots, leading away from the shed toward Route 68. They followed the prints through the thinning fog, over gravel and dead leaves, until the path reached a small clearing. There, parked neatly behind a screen of pine trees, was a van, white, unmarked, doors slightly open. The smell hit first: fuel, disinfectant, and something worse underneath, decay masked with alcohol. Inside were surgical gloves, plastic sheeting, and a dozen small bottles labeled in French, diethyl ether. Ether. Lemaire's jaw tightened. He uses it for sedation. At the back of the van, a wooden crate lay open, containing several objects sealed in vacuum bags, women's scarves, a child's toy, a folded note. Lukas unfolded the paper. The handwriting was neat, almost elegant. "You've made progress, Lukas. But progress is never without loss. You'll understand soon." He turned the note over. On the back was drawn a small circle, and inside it, a fox's head in red ink. The discovery triggered a full-scale lockdown. Forensics arrived by noon, drones returned with clean footage of the area, and the highway was closed for 6 hours. But by sunset, one fact became painfully clear: the man with the beret had vanished again, leaving no fingerprints, no DNA, no digital trail. Lukas gave his statement inside the mobile unit, exhausted but wired. When he finished, Lemaire placed a folder on the table, photographs of the IDs from the underground room. "These people," Lemaire said quietly, "their families still wait for answers. You saw what's down there. He wanted you to see it." "Why?" Lukas rubbed his temples. "Because he wants me to understand him. Because he thinks we are the same." "Are you?" Lemaire asked. Lukas looked up, eyes bloodshot. "No. I stopped that night because I hoped to save someone. He stops because he wants to watch them die." Lemaire nodded slowly, though doubt flickered behind his eyes. Outside, the fog was lifting at last, revealing the forest drenched in silver light. The Aire du Renard Rouge looked deceptively peaceful again, the kind of place where a traveler might stop for a cigarette, stretch, and never realize how many ghosts were watching from the trees. As the cleanup teams dismantled the command post, Lukas stood by the edge of the lot, staring into the forest. Somewhere out there, the man with the beret was still breathing, still waiting. And in the distance, carried faintly on the wind, came the echo of a familiar sound. 3 slow knocks. Then silence. Section 3, The Revelation. The next 48 hours blurred into a storm of reports, interviews, and restless half-sleeps. Lukas remained at the Liege headquarters, a grey, brutalist building that smelled faintly of stale coffee and cold metal. Outside, the rain hadn't stopped since their return from the Renard Rouge rest stop. He had barely eaten. Every time he closed his eyes, he heard the tape, that voice whispering, "You remember the fire? She's the reason I do this." Commandant Lemaire had placed him under informal observation, citing psychological strain. But the truth was simpler: they didn't trust him. Not entirely. The killer had known too much, too many personal details. Someone inside the police network had leaked information, or worse, been part of it. And Lukas, the outsider, the truck driver with the haunted eyes, had become both a witness and a suspect. At 9:07 a.m. on the third day, Verhoeven entered the observation room carrying a tablet. "Commandant wants you to see this," he said quietly, placing it in front of Lukas. The screen displayed a still frame from the SD card they'd recovered, not from the hidden camera inside the van, but from another folder recently decrypted by forensics. It showed a highway toll booth, time-stamped 4 months earlier. A white van passing through. Lukas frowned. "That's not his van. It's older. Different make. Look closer," Verhoeven said. Lukas zoomed in. Behind the windshield, a faint reflection, a face in the driver's seat. A woman. Dark hair tied back, mid-30s. Lukas's chest tightened. He knew that face. Camille, he whispered. His ex-wife. The revelation struck him like a blow. Where did this come from? Verhoeven exhaled. From the same folder as the others. The file name included her initials, CM. It was recorded near Arlon, 3 weeks before the accident you reported last year. Lukas shook his head. That's impossible. Camille never drove through Arlon. She was in Paris that week. Lemaire entered then, silent as a shadow, closing the door behind him. Lukas, he said evenly, we pulled traffic records from that toll plaza. The license plate matches the one registered to your wife's company car. She crossed into Belgium at 23:18 that night. No, Lukas said, rising from his chair. She wouldn't, she hated long drives. He trailed off, realizing his own memory was a blur of arguments, divorce papers, unanswered calls. She didn't tell you, Lemaire said softly. She was following you. Lukas's breath caught. What? She tracked your route that week. Your logbook says you made the Paris-Liège run 3 times in 5 days. Someone was watching you even then. We think Camille found something in your truck. Maybe a clue you didn't notice. Lukas sank back into his chair, the world tilting. The killer's words echoed in his head, the woman in the white van. She's the reason I do this. He whispered, the van that burned on the E25, it wasn't random. Lemaire nodded slowly. It was her. The room fell silent except for the hum of fluorescent lights. Lukas's mind raced, the night of the accident, the flames licking the trees, the screams muffled by metal. He had tried to open the door, but the heat had driven him back. He had believed she was just a stranger. Now he realized the killer had been there too, watching. Verhoeven spoke quietly. We think Elom Aubert staged the crash. He wanted you to see it, to break you. Maybe he'd already taken her. Maybe the fire was just his way of showing control. Lukas pressed his hands against his face. You're saying he killed her, to reach me? Yes, Lemaire said. And he's not finished. They reviewed the recovered map again, spreading high-resolution photos across the briefing table. Each red thread represented a victim, each dot a rest stop or highway crossing. But as Lukas stared at the lines, something new emerged, a pattern not of geography but of movement. These routes, he said slowly, tracing one with his finger. They are not random. They form loops, delivery circuits, commercial corridors. Trucking lanes. Verhoeven frowned. So he's targeting rest stops along freight routes. More than that, Lukas said. He's following my routes. Every disappearance since last year lines up with roads I've driven. Lemaire leaned closer. You're certain? Lukas nodded, swallowing hard. He's been shadowing me for months. He must be monitoring GPS logs or transport manifests. Maybe someone in the company's dispatch office feeds him the schedules. Which would explain how he knew where would be, Verhoeven added. Lemaire's face hardened. Then we find that leak. Today. He turned to Lukas. Can you give us access to your old employer's network? I can do better, Lukas said, standing. I know someone there who owes me a favor. That afternoon, under discreet escort, Lukas returned to his former employer's depot, a sprawling warehouse complex on the outskirts of Liège, filled with idling trucks and the smell of diesel. Inside, he met Marie Lefevre, the dispatch supervisor, a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and a smoker's rasp. She frowned when she saw the officers. What's this about? Lemaire flashed his badge. Police investigation. We need access to delivery logs from the last 12 months, especially routes assigned to Monsieur Moreau. Marie crossed her arms. Those files are confidential. Unless you have a court order. Lukas interrupted softly. Marie, please. It's about Camille. That name froze her. Camille, she said slowly. Your wife? She's dead, Lukas said. And the man who killed her used our route data to track me. Something flickered behind Marie's eyes, recognition, then fear. Without another word, she turned to her terminal, hands trembling slightly. I thought it was just routine maintenance, she whispered. A man came 6 months ago, said he was from IT support. Showed credentials from head office. Installed new tracking software for compliance with EU freight regulations. Lemaire exchanged a glance with Verhoeven. Describe him. Tall, Marie said. Maybe mid-40s. Spoke perfect French, but with a hint of Dutch. Wore a grey cap. Lukas felt the blood drain from his face. A beret? She nodded. Yes. They accessed the software logs. The installer had used an alias, Henri Baston. The file contained a list of encrypted IP addresses, remote access points connecting to trucks' GPS systems. One of them, Lemaire noticed, had pinged less than 12 hours earlier from a server near Bastogne, the same region as the Bois de la Nuit rest stop. Get a trace, he ordered. Verhoeven ran the command. A map appeared on the screen, a single blinking coordinate deep within the forest, 40 kilometers south. A label next to it read simply, Site 2. Lukas's heart pounded. That's where he is. Lemaire studied the blinking dot for a long moment, then said quietly, no. That's where he wants us to go. By midnight, the team had set up another perimeter near the coordinate. This time, precautions were extreme, isolated comms, analog radios, no GPS. The forest there was older, thicker, the trees gnarled and slick with moss. They found no van, no shelter, only an old transmission tower, long decommissioned, its base surrounded by barbed wire and fallen leaves. At the tower's foundation, a concrete access hatch lay half buried under debris. Same construction as the last bunker, Verhoeven said. Lemaire motioned for 2 officers to open it. Inside was a narrow ladder descending into darkness. Lukas hesitated. His gut screamed that this was wrong, that they were walking into another performance. Still, he followed. The air below was thick and cold. The flashlight beams caught graffiti on the walls, lines of red paint forming words in French and Dutch. We only find peace in mirrors. They reached the chamber at the bottom, empty, except for a single metal chair, and a mirror bolted to the far wall. On the chair lay a folded note and a small cassette player identical to the one from the shed. Lemaire unfolded the paper. You've come far, Lukas. But you keep looking for me when you should be looking at yourself. The commandant pressed play. The tape hissed, then the voice spoke, calm and measured. I learned from you, Lukas. How to drive at night. How to wait. How to disappear. You showed me everything when you still thought I was just another driver. Lukas froze. No, he whispered. I was the trainee, remember? The one you mentored after the divorce. You taught me the roads, the stops, the habits of lonely travelers. I owe you for all of it. The name came next, crisp and final. Etienne Dubois. The room fell silent except for Lukas's ragged breathing. Etienne. The missing hitchhiker. The victim, whose phone he'd found in the restroom. He wasn't a victim. He was the apprentice. Lemaire's voice was tight. He played both sides. Recorded the crime scenes himself. Lukas stumbled backward, his flashlight clattering to the floor. He was in my truck. Last year. Short run from Lyon to Namur. Said he was hitching for work. I gave him a lift. He remembered now, the quiet young man with polite manners, fascinated by routes and truck stops. They had talked for hours. Lukas had thought he'd done a good deed. And now that kindness had birthed a monster. The mirror on the wall flickered, a faint light behind it, then a projection, still images flashing one after another. Photos of victims. Photos of rest stops. And finally, a photo of Lukas himself, taken through a truck window while he slept. Then the tape ended. You see now, Lukas. You made me. Lemaire shouted for backup, forensics, containment, but Lukas barely heard him. His reflection stared back from the mirror, hollow-eyed and trembling, framed by words scrawled above in red paint. Silence is consent. The same phrase from the first bunker. Only now did he understand what it meant. He had seen signs, years before, strange vans, nervous travelers, missing posters at rest stops, but he'd said nothing. He had stayed silent. And silence had become complicity. As they ascended back into the cold night, the forest felt heavier than before, pressing close around them. The rain had stopped, but the mist remained, dense, alive, and watching. Lemaire spoke quietly beside him. We'll find him. Both of them, if there's more. Lukas didn't answer. He knew the truth now. He wasn't just the witness. He was the seed. Part 3, The Fox's Den. Section 1, The Road Back. Lukas Morrow hadn't driven a truck in 3 months. He told himself he'd left the highways behind, that the nights of diesel fumes and humming asphalt were over. Yet the sound of distant engines still followed him into sleep. After the revelation in the Ardennes, the bunker, the tapes, the mirror, he had retreated to his small apartment in Liege, a third-floor room overlooking the Meuse River. He barely spoke to anyone, and when he did, his voice carried a strange hollowness, like it came from another room. But the silence didn't last. Every morning, a new envelope appeared at his door. No stamp, no address. Inside, a single photograph. The first was a picture of his truck, taken years ago, parked outside a rest stop. The second showed the same rest stop at night, fog curling around the lights. The third, the one that made him drop his coffee and back away, showed him, standing at his window, the photo taken from the street below. Each envelope bore the same small drawing in red ink, the fox's head. He called Lemaire. The commandant listened in silence, then said only, "We expected this. He's testing you. Seeing if you'll come back on your own." Lukas hesitated. "And if I do? Then he'll make his move." The official investigation had stalled. Interpol confirmed that Etienne Dubois, now presumed to be the man known as L'Homme au Béret, had crossed multiple borders using forged credentials. The pattern of disappearances had slowed, almost ceased, as if the killer was lying low, or waiting. Meanwhile, the press turned the case into a mythology, the fox of the Ardennes, the ghost in the fog. Each article speculated about accomplices, secret societies, cannibal cults. But Lukas knew better. There was only one man, one reflection. And the reflection wanted closure. When the fourth envelope arrived, it contained something different, a truck manifest, printed from his old company system. The highlighted line read: Route 74B, Liege to Bastogne, departure, October 29, 11 p.m. A familiar route. The same one where Camille had died. Scrawled beneath it in red ink were 5 words. Drive it. Alone. Or others burn. That night, Lukas sat at his kitchen table, the paper spread before him, the city outside blurred by rain. He knew what it meant, that Etienne wanted him back on the road, in his old element, where every rest stop could be an ambush. Part of him wanted to call Lemaire immediately. But another part, the darker one, whispered that this was his burden alone. At 10:45 p.m., Lukas walked into the depot for the first time in months. The same old smell of rubber and fuel greeted him. The night supervisor barely looked up when Lukas signed the departure sheet. Route 74B. Nobody's touched that one since you left, he said. Roadworks on the Bastogne stretch. Be careful. Lukas nodded, forcing a smile. He didn't mention the unmarked car 2 blocks away, the one Lemaire had assigned for discreet surveillance. The commandant had agreed to the plan, reluctantly, but Lukas insisted on baiting the trap. If Etienne wanted him to drive, then he would drive. But this time, he wouldn't be the hunted. By midnight, Lukas was back behind the wheel of his refrigerated truck, the hum of the engine vibrating through the seat like an old, dangerous lullaby. The cab was filled with cameras, tiny GoPros disguised in vents and mirrors, all transmitting to Lemaire's mobile command unit miles behind. Outside, the fog gathered early, thick and white against the trees. The road wound like a pale scar through the blackness of the Ardennes. Lukas checked his mirrors every few seconds. Nothing but mist. Then, at 0:37, his dashboard GPS flickered. The digital map glitched, static lines crossing the display, and a new route appeared automatically, rerouting him off the highway toward exit 24, Aire des Sapins Noirs. Lukas's throat tightened. That rest stop wasn't on any schedule. It had been closed for years. The radio crackled, Lemaire's voice, distorted by interference. Lukas, do not take the exit. Repeat, stay on the main road. We are tracking a secondary signal near your position. But Lukas was already braking. Something in him, part fear, part fatal compulsion, needed to see where the road led. The turnoff wound through a stand of black pines, the fog thick enough to smear his headlights into halos. The truck's tires crunched over gravel. Ahead, the faint glow of an old sodium lamp revealed a cracked parking area, and a single building, the skeletal remains of a rest-stop cafe. Lukas parked, engine idling, lights on. He gripped the steering wheel until his knuckles went white. For a long moment, nothing happened. Only the hum of the diesel engine and the whisper of wind through broken glass. Then, from the edge of the lot, a figure stepped into the light. He wasn't wearing the beret now, just a hood, pulled low. His posture was calm, his movements precise. Lukas's blood ran cold. He turned on the dash camera and muttered, "He's here." The man stopped 5 meters away, hands empty, face half hidden by the fog. "Bonsoir, Lukas," he said softly. "You came." Lukas opened the door, climbing down slowly, every sense screaming trap. Etienne smiled faintly. "You've always been predictable. It's your best quality. What do you want?" Lukas asked, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through him. "I want you to understand," Etienne said. "All of this, the notes, the rest stops, the blood, it wasn't about them. It was about you. I studied you. Learned the loneliness, the silence. You showed me how to make people vanish without a sound." Lukas's jaw clenched. "You're insane." "Maybe," Etienne said. "But I'm also your creation." He stepped closer, and for the first time, Lukas saw the faint burn scars along the side of his neck. "She was in that van, wasn't she?" Lukas said. "Camille." Etienne's smile faded. "Yes. And you left her there?" Lukas shook his head violently. "I couldn't reach her." Etienne interrupted, voice sharp now. "But I could. I pulled her out. She begged for you. You never came." His eyes gleamed with something between fury and awe. "She lived for 2 hours after that. Long enough to tell me everything about you." Lukas felt the world tilt again. "You're lying." "Am I?" Etienne asked. "Then why did she write your name on the inside of the van door before she died?" "I saw it, Lukas. I saw the guilt written in soot. Before Lukas could respond, a sound cracked the air, the crunch of boots on gravel from behind the cafe. Etienne turned his head slightly. Ah! The commandant sends his dogs again. The radio in Lukas's pocket came alive. Team Alpha, closing perimeter. Hold your position. But the signal dissolved into static. Etienne tilted his head, amused. You really think I'd let them listen? He raised a small transmitter, the same kind of frequency jammer found at the previous site. Everything that happens here, happens between us, he said. Then he dropped the jammer to the ground and crushed it under his boot. Now, he murmured, let's finish this. He lunged forward faster than Lukas expected, knocking him back against the truck's side. The impact rattled through metal and bone. Lukas grabbed the nearest thing, a tire iron from the step, and swung blindly. It connected with Etienne's shoulder, sending him stumbling back. The fog swallowed them both. They circled, shadows in white mist, the sound of breathing in gravel underfoot. Etienne's voice drifted from somewhere unseen. Do you know why I wear the fox? Because the fox doesn't chase. He waits. He listens. And when the prey steps too close. Lukas swung again, hitting nothing. He bites. A sharp pain seared across Lukas's ribs. Etienne had a knife now, thin, surgical, glinting in the dim light. Lukas staggered back, clutching his side, gasping. In the distance, faintly through the fog, came the sound of sirens. Lemaire's team was closing in. Etienne hissed, too late, mon ami. The story ends when I say it does. He raised the knife again. And a gunshot split the air. Etienne froze. His eyes widened. A bloom of red spread across his chest. He stumbled once, twice, and fell backward into the gravel. Behind him stood Commandant Lemaire, gun still smoking, eyes hard as steel. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Only the wind through the pines, soft and mournful. Lukas dropped to his knees, blood dripping from his side. You followed the signal, he rasped. Lemaire shook his head. No. You were never off our map. He looked down at Etienne's body, the fox tattoo faintly visible beneath torn fabric. End of the hunt, he said. But Lukas, staring at the fallen man, wasn't sure. Etienne's expression wasn't one of fear or defeat. It was peace, like someone watching a plan reach its conclusion. And as the fog rolled in again, Lukas saw something gleam in Etienne's dead hand, a small flash drive, coated in blood. Lemaire bent down, pried it free, and pocketed it without a word. Then he looked at Lukas. You did what you had to do. It's over. But Lukas knew better. Somewhere, behind the layers of fog and blood and memory, the story had just shifted, from the hunter to the heir. Section 2, The Den Unsealed. They processed the scene until dawn. Police vans lined the gravel lot of the Aire des Sapins Noirs, their blue lights revolving weakly through the fog. Etienne Dubois, l'homme au béret, the fox, lay zipped in a black bag at the center of it all, his pale hand still marked by dried blood and the faint outline where the flash drive had been clenched. Commandant Lemaire supervised quietly while forensic technicians photographed, measured, and sealed. To any outsider it looked like closure. Inside, no one felt it. Not even relief, just a kind of stunned vacancy. Lukas sat on the rear bumper of an ambulance, shirt cut open where medics had bandaged his side. The pain was secondary to the numbness spreading behind his ribs. He watched the paramedics load the body bag into a van, and a small, treacherous thought passed through him, what if he's still breathing in there? Lemaire approached, hands in his coat pockets. You'll live, he said. 4 stitches. Lukas gave a humorless nod. That's more than I can say for him. Lemaire's gaze lingered on the flash drive sealed in an evidence pouch. You and I both know it won't end with him. Lukas looked up. Because he wanted us to find that. Exactly, Lemaire said. It's an invitation. Or a map. The file. Back in Liege headquarters, the flash drive was placed in an isolated forensic lab, no network, no wireless, no risk. Verhoeven handled the analysis while Lemaire and Lukas watched through the observation glass. The screen filled with folders, each labeled by date and highway code. Most contained nothing but corrupted fragments, jumbled text files, static-filled audio. But one folder, titled Renaud PRE, opened cleanly. Inside were hundreds of image thumbnails, CCTV captures, truck manifests, rest stop schematics, even photographs of police officers. The metadata placed some files as recent as 3 days before the shootout. He had surveillance on us, Verhoeven said. Including operations that were never made public. Lemaire's brow tightened. Then someone kept feeding him data, after he went rogue. He clicked on the final file in the folder, denmaster.xlsx. A spreadsheet appeared, rows of names, locations, and coded notes. At the top, a header in red, Prospect Line EU Corridor Phase 2. Lemaire read the first line aloud. Dubois Field Operative. Status, deceased. Then the next, Moreau Custodian. Lukas's mouth went dry. Custodian. Verhoeven scrolled. Each name carried a role, handler, courier, custodian, witness. Some had addresses, others only initials. One column simply read active sites, 17. These are code positions, Verhoeven said. A hierarchy. Dubois wasn't working alone. He was a single node. Lemaire exhaled slowly. And whoever runs this network labeled you as part of it, Lukas. Echoes in the data. They continued parsing files for hours. Buried deep inside was an audio archive named training logs. Each clip was short, like journal entries. Audio number 12. The silence of the highway is better than prayer. The engines keep secrets if you listen long enough. Audio number 27. Lukas says people trust a driver who looks tired. They never see what's in the mirrors. Lukas flinched at the sound of Etienne's voice, calm, admiring, almost affectionate. Audio number 44. He taught me that empathy is a doorway. You knock with kindness before you enter with fear. Lemaire shut off the playback. He was documenting his apprenticeship. Lukas whispered, he was rewriting it into doctrine. They skimmed further down the file tree until Verhoeven stopped. Wait. This one's different. The folder name was a single date, 29-10 next, the day after tonight. Inside, a single photograph. It showed Lukas's apartment building from across the street. A timestamp in the corner read tomorrow midnight. Below the image, a line of text. The custodian ascends when the father sleeps. Containment. Lemaire slammed the laptop shut. We relocate him tonight. Secure address, armed guard. Lukas shook his head. It won't matter. If they've been inside your systems once, they can find me again. That's not your decision. No, Lukas said quietly, but it's my life they are using as bait. For a moment, Commandant Lemaire's authority faltered. The older man rubbed his eyes, exhaustion bleeding through. We spent 2 years chasing a ghost who lived inside our infrastructure. Every file, every camera, every radio frequency. You think you can outrun a network? Lukas met his gaze. No. But maybe I can draw it out. The bargain. That evening, against protocol, Lukas convinced Lemaire to let him access the spreadsheet one last time. The commandant agreed under one condition. He'd do it in the interrogation suite, under surveillance. Lukas studied the list of active sites. Each entry corresponded to a country code, BE, NL, FR, DE, followed by a numeric tag. Only one tag bore a future date, FR09-2025. Tomorrow, Lukas said. French border, kilometer 09 on the A4. That's a rest stop. Verhoeven checked the database. Aire du Chêne Vert closed for renovation since 2018. Lukas nodded slowly. Then that's where they'll come. Phase 2. Lemaire crossed his arms. You expect us to walk into another trap? I expect them to, Lukas said. They think they are finishing his work. Let's give them a ghost to chase. Ghost route. At 22:30 hours, the operation moved into motion under a false pretext. Lemaire leaked a controlled rumor, through an encrypted channel already compromised in the first investigation. Lucas Moreau scheduled for witness transfer to Paris via the A4 at midnight. Within minutes, the bait was taken. A hidden receiver in the evidence room logged a ping from an unknown satellite modem matching the same pattern as the Renaud Rouge broadcast. They are listening, Verhoeven confirmed. Good, Lemaire said. Let's make them come to us. Lukas rode in a decoy truck identical to his old rig, complete with refrigerated cargo. Inside the cabin, microphones and motion sensors recorded every vibration. 2 kilometers behind, a convoy of tactical units rolled in silence. The fog returned, almost on cue. By 23:50, the convoy entered the forest stretch leading to Aire du Chêne Vert. The highway lights flickered in and out as if the circuit itself was afraid. The return of the fox. Visual on structure, Verhoeven reported through radio. No movement. The rest stop appeared through the mist, a shell of cracked concrete and overgrown weeds. The signage was missing, only rusted bolts left behind. Lemaire's voice came through the headset. Remember, we control the perimeter. No heroics. Lukas exhaled. Understood. He slowed the truck, headlights sweeping the lot. Nothing. Then, from the edge of his vision, a light blinked once. Not a reflection. A deliberate signal, 3 short flashes, 1 long. Morse? FOX. Contact, Lukas whispered. The radio hissed with static. Lemaire's reply was cut off mid-word. Lukas felt it before he saw it, the subtle dip in the truck's suspension. Weight added somewhere behind the cab. Someone had climbed on. He reached for the door handle. And a voice whispered through the CB speaker, soft and metallic. Phase 2 initiated, custodian. Lukas froze. The voice wasn't Etienne's. It was older, deeper, and calm with authority. The father may sleep, but the den remains. The engine died. The dashboard lights blinked out. Silence. Interference. Lemaire's command unit lost contact at exactly 0:01. All live feeds froze, GPS trackers vanished. Verhoeven slammed the console. Total blackout. They've overridden the entire frequency band. Send in Alpha, Lemaire ordered. But before the tactical team could reach the rest stop, every radio erupted with the same broadcast. The road has many mouths, Commandant. You closed one. 17 remain. The voice chuckled, low, resonant, confident. Tell Lukas he's done well. The custodian kept the door open. Inside the fog. Meanwhile, inside the truck, Lukas's flashlight flickered. Through the windshield he saw shapes moving, 2, maybe 3, emerging from the fog in heavy coats and masks. No words, only synchronized motion. He fumbled for the emergency flare under the seat and yanked it open. The sudden red light carved the fog into ribbons. For a split second he saw them clearly. One carried a portable antenna pack, another a camera, and between them a symbol painted across their chests, a fox's head enclosed by 17 circles. The leader raised a hand, palm outward, as if in salute. Lukas's body moved before thought. He hurled the flare. It struck the antenna pack, igniting the spilled fuel near the truck's rear tires. Flame leapt upward, slicing through mist with a roar. The figures staggered back into shadow. Lukas threw himself from the cab and hit the gravel hard, rolling until the world became heat and smoke. In the distance he heard sirens and shouted French orders. The fire lit the forest like sunrise. Aftermath. By morning, the site was a crater of twisted metal and scorched soil. Forensic teams recovered fragments of the antenna pack, melted masks, and traces of accelerant, but no bodies. Whether the figures had burned or vanished into the woods, no one could tell. Lemaire stood beside the wreckage, coat flapping in the wind. 17 circles, he muttered. 17 rest stops. Verhoeven nodded grimly. Phase 2. They found Lukas sitting on the guardrail, wrapped in a thermal blanket, soot streaking his face. He stared at the smoke rising through the trees. Any survivors? He asked. None confirmed, Lemaire said. But the voice, whoever it was, still broadcasts on shortband. We traced the origin to Luxembourg, then lost it. Lukas closed his eyes. Then it's not over. Lemaire placed a hand on his shoulder. No. But you're out now. Lukas didn't answer. He looked toward the forest, where fog once again began to gather, curling like breath from an unseen mouth. In the distance, barely audible beneath the rumble of cleanup crews, came the faintest sound, 3 deliberate knocks against metal. The signal. The calling card. The den was awake. Section 3, The Last Mile. The fire at the Aire du Chêne Vert burned for 6 hours before the last embers died. By then, the official story had already begun to take shape. A failed ambush by remnants of an unidentified criminal group, neutralized through swift police intervention. But Lukas knew the report was a lie, a comfort written for the public and the politicians. Because when he had crawled from the flames, coughing black smoke, he had seen their faces. Not all of them were strangers. One of the masked figures had stumbled toward him as the flare ignited, and for an instant, the mask had melted enough to reveal a human face beneath, pale, narrow, terrified. He recognized it. Marie Lefevre, the dispatcher who had helped them uncover the leak. She hadn't been coerced. She'd been involved. And that meant the den wasn't some external force. It was woven into the same systems everyone used, transport networks, logistics databases, freight corridors, all the arteries of Europe humming under the guise of efficiency. The perfect camouflage for organized predation. They questioned Lukas for 14 hours straight. Lemaire kept him from being arrested, but not from suspicion. The investigators wanted answers. About the missing bodies. About the encrypted files on the flash drive. About his supposed role as custodian. Lukas gave them nothing beyond what they already knew. He told them about the flare, the fire, the fog. He left out the rest, the look on Marie's half-burned face, the symbol painted on the inside of the truck door before it exploded, a fox's head circled by 18 rings. The number had grown. When they finally released him, Leach felt unfamiliar. The city moved too fast, too bright, as if life had dared to continue without his consent. He rented a small flat above a bakery near the river, where the windows faced the bridges and the street lamps shimmered on wet cobblestones. For a week he tried to live quietly. He cooked, read, even slept. But each morning, he found subtle changes. A coffee mug moved, a curtain drawn the wrong way, a faint smell of disinfectant near the door. Someone had been there. He told Lemaire, who promised to send patrol cars, but Lukas declined. If they are watching, he said, let them think I'm still afraid. The commandant didn't argue. He simply left a burner phone on the table and said, when you decide what to do next, call me first. That night, Lukas stood at the window long after the bakery lights went out. Rain fell in a steady rhythm, gentle but endless. Somewhere below, a delivery truck hissed to a stop, brakes sighing like a tired animal. The sound froze him. The truck was white, unmarked. Its engine idled longer than necessary. Then a man stepped out, tall, wearing a coat too familiar in silhouette. Not Etienne, the posture was different, heavier, older. But the motion was deliberate, rehearsed. Lukas leaned closer. The man turned slightly toward the lamplight. His face was obscured by a cap, but in his hand, he held a beret, folded neatly, like a relic. The man placed it on the truck's hood, glanced up at Lukas's window, and smiled before climbing back inside. The truck rolled away into the mist. Lukas's phone buzzed once. A text from an unknown number. The road remembers its maker. The pattern. Sleep became impossible after that. Lukas spent nights tracing highways on an old paper atlas, comparing them to the coordinates from Etienne's spreadsheet. The pattern was clearer now. Every active site formed a rough spiral across Western Europe, all converging on a central point, Luxembourg. When he told Lemaire, the commandant went still. That's where the signal vanished after the Chaîne Verte fire. Lukas nodded. And where Camille's company had its logistics headquarters. So you think it began there? No, Lukas said softly. It ends there. Lemaire stuttered him. You're going after them. Lukas didn't deny it. Then you'll die out there, Lemaire said flatly. Maybe, Lukas replied. But at least I'll die moving. Return to the fog. He left 2 days later, driving a borrowed truck under a false manifest. The radio stayed off, the world outside shrank to the beam of his headlights. The roads grew emptier as he crossed into Luxembourg, the forest pressing close again, whispering in the same tongue it had used the night Camille burned. At 2:14 a.m., he reached an unmarked access road branching off the main highway, not on any GPS, but matching the coordinates from the spreadsheet. He turned onto it. Fog waited like a living thing. The road narrowed, asphalt giving way to gravel. After 3 kilometers, he saw lights, a warehouse low and windowless, half hidden among pines. A single truck was parked outside, engine off, back doors open. He stopped, listening. No sound. No wind. Just that suffocating stillness before an answer reveals itself. Inside the warehouse, the air was metallic, heavy with oil and disinfectant. Rows of refrigerated containers lined the walls, each marked with numbers and barcodes. He opened the nearest one. Empty. The next. Also empty, except for a single object placed carefully at the center. A mirror. Across its surface, written in condensation, were the words. Welcome home, custodian. The broadcast. The lights snapped on. Lemaire's voice echoed through hidden speakers. Lukas, stop where you are. We have you on thermal. Step away from the containers. He froze. How? Did you really think I'd let you walk into hell alone? Lemaire said. We traced your plates. You led us straight to the nest. Lukas exhaled, half in relief, half in dread. Then we are both where we belong. The commandant's tone shifted. Don't move. My team's breaching in 30 seconds. But before he could answer, another voice cut through the speakers, deeper, led over the same channel. Commandant Lemaire, you should listen to your witness. Static roared. Screens around the warehouse flickered to life, showing live CCTV feeds of the Leech headquarters, corridors, offices, holding cells. On one monitor, Verhoeven sat at a console, oblivious. Then a man in a mask stepped behind him, and drew a knife across his throat. Lemaire's shout echoed through the radio. We told you, 17 mouths remain, the voice said. You burned one. We opened 2 more. The feeds went dark. Lukas whispered, "You're everywhere." "We are the road," the voice replied. "And the custodian drives." The decision. Gunfire erupted outside. Shouts in French and Dutch. Lukas ducked behind the truck, heart pounding. Through the half-open warehouse door he saw shadows moving in the fog, flashes of muzzle fire, silhouettes collapsing. Then came the smell of ether. The same chemical reek that had haunted every rest stop before. Lukas's vision swam. He stumbled toward the mirror again, gripping its frame to steady himself. The words had begun to fade, replaced by his reflection, pale, shaking, eyes hollow. In that reflection, behind him, a figure appeared. Not Etienne, not the man in the truck, but someone older, face obscured by the blur of light. "It's time, Lukas," the reflection said. "You kept the door open. Now you must close it." His hand reached instinctively toward the truck's ignition switch. A remote detonator wired into the fuel line, a fail-safe he'd installed himself before leaving Liege. Outside, the shouts grew fainter. The fog thickened. He thought of Camille. Of the screams in the burning van. Of the silence that had followed. "Not again," he whispered. And then he pressed the button. The last mile. The explosion tore through the forest like thunder. Windows shattered miles away. Flames consumed the warehouse, the trucks, and the road itself, sealing it in molten glass. Lemaire's convoy arrived minutes later, met by an inferno they could not enter. He stood in the rain as the fire devoured everything, shouting orders no one could hear. When the blaze finally died at dawn, they found nothing but twisted steel and blackened mirrors. No bodies. No trace of Lukas Moreau. But on the scorched concrete near the center of the blast, investigators found a single thing untouched by flame, a fragment of a truck license plate, warped but legible. Scratched into the metal, likely by hand, were 3 words in French. "Fermez la route." Close the road. Epilogue. Months later, travelers along the E411 near the Ardennes began reporting strange radio interference. Late at night, when fog rolled low and the roads emptied, CB radios would crackle to life without input. Sometimes it was just static. Sometimes it was a voice. "Keep your lights on. Don't stop." Truckers whispered that it was Lukas, the custodian, still out there somewhere, guiding others away from the dense roads, paying his penance mile by mile. Commandant Lemaire never dismissed the rumors. Every few weeks he would drive alone into the forest and listen. One night, as he passed the charred ruins of Aire du Renard Rouge, his radio clicked once, 3 sharp knocks. Then a voice, barely audible beneath the hum. "The road is closed." And the fog swallowed the signal whole.